we get going.
Okay, thank you.
So you should be able to start sharing your cameras. It does not turn on by default. So you have to go down and hit start video down in the left-hand corner of the Zoom screen.
Yes, I have it, and I click on it. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
I have stopped it.
That's what the meeting alert says.
Alrighty.
Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Heather. Is your camera working?
I have the same issue as you.
Okay.
All right, I fixed it. So you should be able to go down with your cameras. There we go.
There we are. Thanks.
Much better.
Yes, thank you.
Can you guys hear me? This is Annette.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
So Annette, do you think this will be a long meeting?
I think so. I think it'll probably go till 4, but
Yeah.
I don't know, the staff reports are lengthy, I guess, so.
Okay.
I need to leave closer to 4. If I need to, I'll take this in my car on my drive back
Get
to
it
the
done
city.
by then. We'll just
Okay.
try to hurry if we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get into that point, if I don't get on the road and get past Toro Creek, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm on the coast right now.
Now, I'm just curious, can you guys see my face on the screen or not?
No, just your name and a
Okay,
black
well, that's
screen.
fine with me. I know how to mute and unmute myself, so we can just keep it that way. I just want to make sure you can hear me, so.
Okay,
that's good.
yeah, we can see you fine.
Okay.
Do we have any emails that we're going to need to have read in for public comment?
No, I checked the email box right now. There's nothing in there.
Okay, and Luke, you'll be handling the phone calls?
Yes, we've got Kelly screening calls. I'll let them into the meeting for during public comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll get any, but just in case.
Yep.
Thank you. So Heather, did you get the emergency email about meeting tomorrow for the chamber?
Sorry, are you talking to me?
Yes, I am. Did you get an email regarding the chamber having an emergency meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, I did.
I don't know whether that meant we were supposed to go. Did you?
I'm not sure either. I think
Okay.
it might have been an FYI, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It was kind of cryptic, so I wondered if you had a feeling.
I thought maybe it already happened. I'm not sure.
I
Hi,
have no idea. Oh, I guess we'll find out. Hi, Phil.
how are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Very well. Thanks for, oops, my phone's ringing. Sorry.
Better
Hold on.
catch it.
There we go. I had to turn that off. Great job last night thanks for hanging in there for a long time.
Everybody looks so tired.
It was
I
late
feel
night.
so
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah, it was hard. Yep.
Yeah, it was really
I don't
hard.
think I got to bed till after midnight. Abigail wet the bed, so Brian had to change. Then I had to start the
Oh.
laundry.
Oh my goodness. That's
And then we
awful.
get up at 5, so I'm like, oh.
Yeah, you need every second of sleep.
Yeah.
I think what did me in was reading all the emails and the comments that when Laura was doing that, I felt myself kind of droopy, you know.
That was a lot. 130. I couldn't believe it. It's unbelievable. I mean, and we didn't do anything really special other than our press release. And we went and talked to a few businesses and let them know because people had expressed interest. But other than that, yeah, it was impressive that there was that much involvement.
Well, I
At least
thought it
it was-
was interesting. Only one was opposed.
I know, me too.
I thought there was going to be a lot more based on, what we saw at a couple of our public outreach sessions, especially one we had in the Sunken Gardens Park last year. Yeah, I thought there would have been more, but maybe we answered the questions. Maybe we got through it, or maybe we just wore people out. I don't know. I hope that's not the case.
I do too.
At least we got input.
Yeah.
Roberta, that meeting happened already this morning.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah, I
just
had to
missed
look
it.
back at the date and time it happened this morning.
Ah, got it. Thank
It
you.
looks really dark in the screen for some reason. Is that? Oh, well.
No, my lighting always gets really weird. So I
my
have these
lighting looks
halogens.
Weird. My screen looks for some reason, my face looks dark on the screen. Maybe that's just
Kind
me.
of does, yeah.
It's
Maybe
the
it's-
window, Phyllis, the window's behind you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because so much light's coming from it, it's
Shoot.
messing with the white balance, so that's
Okay,
why.
well, I would have to change my location, and it's a bit late for that.
Go get some cardboard and lay it up.
Darn.
Oh, hi, Emily.
Now,
Hello there.
does anybody see me yet?
Yeah, hi,
Hi,
Dwayne. How are
Dwayne.
you?
Hello, hello, hello. How's
Glad
everybody
you made
doing?
it.
Okay.
I can't get my camera to work. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
That might be as good as it gets today.
Well, at least you're here.
Uh-oh. I have an invader on the, how big is he? It's a giant cat.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a little note from Clayton Cook. You are not seen, Clayton, but your chat came up.
Should he be, I'm not sure who Clayton Cook is. Should he be allowed into the meeting?
I think he's an
He's
applicant.
yes. Hi, everyone. This is John. He's an applicant. So I suppose during public comment or after the presentation, he can go ahead and speak.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let him in at that time then.
Okay, thanks.
So is everybody here but Mark? Is that correct, Annette?
I'm here.
Oh, you're
Oh,
here?
there he is.
Oh.
Mark,
There's your smiling
Yeah,
face.
Mark.
Okay. All right. Annette, let me know when you're ready to start the meeting, please.
I am ready when you are.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Very good. Let's go ahead and call the meeting of the Design Review Committee to order. Roll call, Annette.
Committee member Anderson,
here.
committee member Daris,
Here.
committee member Newsom,
Here.
committee member Baranek,
Here.
chairperson Fonzie,
Here.
all present.
Thanks, Annette. Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Newsom, second by Anderson, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we'll approve the agenda and move on to public comment. Public comment is being done by telephone. If anybody is watching or listening, the number is 805-538-2888. And this public comment period is for any item that is not on today's agenda over which we have jurisdiction as a public agency. Are there any calls coming in, Luke?
We have no calls for general public comment.
Okay, we'll call it back again later and see if we get any more. All right, let's move on to the consent calendar, which is approval of the draft minutes of June 24th, 2020. Are there any comments or changes to the minutes from the members? Shake your head, I can see you.
Oh, yeah, nope.
Nope, okay,
None.
none, very good. And was there anybody that commented from the public, Luke?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, very good. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, I couldn't tell who it was that made the motion. Okay, Heather Newsom made the motion. Was that Emily that seconded?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on. Our first item is design review of a planned mixed-use development at 3710 El Camino Real. Staff report, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen, John. Sorry,
Share my screen. Sorry.
Interrupt. John's going to go ahead and give that presentation, but I was just going to give a little bit of a preamble. Which item are we doing first, John? I don't have
The mixed use first, and then we'll go
Okay.
ahead and do the commercial park.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and let you present.
Cool. Hey, Luke, can you let me share my screen?
Yes. All right, let me. Sorry.
problem.
Trying to figure out how to exactly do that with you.
It just says host disabled participant screen sharing.
All right. Let me know if that worked.
Yep, that works. Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Kelly real quick. Luke, I'm wondering if you could send me the Zoom link to send out to a couple applicants since we're having some technical difficulties with the phone line.
It's there on the agenda. Let me, I'll send it to you real quick.
Nick is also trying to get on too. If we can send him a link, Nick DeBar.
Okay.
I'll just go ahead and wait a few minutes to see if we can let those callers in.
The two callers I have here are for the Vandeventer project.
Okay,
So I think we'll be good if you continue.
sounds good. Thanks, Kelly. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. So
And
the
this is
first,
John?
yeah, John Holder, Associate Planner, Community Development. How's
Okay.
everybody doing today?
Great,
Really
thank
good.
you.
So the first item we have is the Cook Mixed Use Project at 3710 El Camino Real. It's use 19-0124. And it's a conditional use permit for a mixed use project in the commercial retail zone. This is the project location and zoning map. As I said, it's at 3710 El Camino Real. The parcel is about 0.649 acres. You can see that they're highlighted in red. As you can see, it's
Hey, Kelly, it's Luke. I was just testing the line. Put me in the screening room because I just heard.
Who is speaking?
I think that was Luke.
That was Luke
Luke,
Knight
okay.
accidentally. He's off now.
Okay, we'll wait.
Go ahead, John.
I'll just keep going. So as I was saying, the site is in red. It's about 0.649 acres. It's in the commercial retail zoning, and it has project frontage along El Camino and also visibility from the Highway 101. As you can see, it's a very narrow parcel that extends from El Camino Real to the Caltrans easement along Highway 101. This is another aerial view. On the north side of the project, there's a non-conforming residential use. On the south side of the project, there's a multifamily complex. A little bit of background on the property and project. There were previous structures on the site that have been demolished. There still is an existing house and shed that will be demolished as part of the proposed project. And today we're seeking DRC direction on site design, and within the site design, the parking, landscaping, and decorative pavement, setbacks and variance, fencing and screening, architectural design, and signage. The proposed project is 3 vertical mixed-use buildings with a total of 6 second-story residential units that'll be mapped as condominiums at a later date, and first-floor commercial retail and warehouse distribution space. As I said earlier, mixed use is conditionally allowed in the commercial retail zone and requires the review of a conditional use permit. So this project will also be reviewed by the Planning Commission. The project consists of a total of just over 8,000 square feet of residential space, 6,742 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, and 27 on-site parking spaces and a shared driveway. The project will also require frontage improvements, which will be under a separate permit, tree removal permit, and an associated variance request for this vertical mixed-use project in the commercial retail zone. This is the proposed site plan. As you can see, the hatched area is paver, which will be utilized throughout the site and and the parking area will consist mostly of paver. There's a fire department turnaround accommodated into the site. In red, you see the 3 buildings. Building 1 and 2 are towards the front part of the property. Building 1 is facing El Camino Real. Building 2 does not face El Camino Real. And building 3 is facing El Camino Real from the back of the property. As you can see, there's a landscape buffer throughout the site where possible. But where that landscape buffer is not possible, that's where the applicant is requesting the variance. And there's 1 site access from El Camino Real. You can also see on this site plan that the majority of the landscaping is towards the rear of the property. And this is just another site plan, but divided. On top is the front portion of the project area, and on the bottom is the rear portion of the project area. And I'll have the site plans divided similar to this throughout the presentation, just because it is a long and narrow parcel and hard to encompass on one site plan. On this site plan, you see more detail of the landscaped areas. There's proposed retail storage areas on the first floor, here and here. And then also, each building contains 2 residential unit garages that'll provide parking for each residential unit. The site design has single access off El Camino Real and a shared driveway. The fire department turnaround is designed into the access and parking area to allow for adequate emergency services. Building 1 is located adjacent to El Camino Real, providing a storefront appearance along El Camino Real frontage. This building 1 and 2 are both proposed with a 0 setback on the north side of the property adjacent to the residential use. All residential units are located on the second story of each building and contain private open space areas or decks ranging from 100 square feet to 170 square feet. And there's pedestrian access throughout the site provided by a 4-foot accessible concrete walkway. There's a slight elevation variation across the property, mainly sloping down towards Highway 101 as you come from El Camino Real, and also from the north to the south side of the property. In order to accommodate this slope, the applicant is proposing the construction of a 3-foot retaining wall throughout the site where appropriate, mainly located along the northern and southern portions of the property line. 28 parking spaces are required for the project under the proposed uses. The applicant is providing 27 parking spaces throughout the site, 6 private garage spaces, 17 shared spaces, 2 handicap parking spaces, 1 motorcycle parking space, and 1 bicycle parking area, which counts as a parking space. The applicant is requesting a parking reduction based on Atascadero Municipal Code Section 9-4115F, which allows for 75% reduced parking based on the shared use of the site. And this is something that Planning Commission will have to approve. These are parking curb stop details. As you can see, the applicant is proposing to incorporate the landscaping areas with the curb stop and also incorporate shade trees throughout the parking areas with the use of this landscape strip. The applicant is proposing street trees along El Camino Real and additional shade trees proposed strategically throughout the parking area. According to the Atascadero Municipal Code, commercial districts are required to landscape at least 10% of the site area. The applicant is proposing 15.5% of the total project area to be landscaped. However, the majority of the landscaping is located towards the rear of the project behind the building 3, which isn't necessarily accessible or usable. There's paver proposed for 33.2% of the project area, but this is not included in the landscape calculation. Here are the divided site plans again. In green, you see the primary landscaped areas. As I mentioned earlier, buildings 1 and 2 are proposed with 0 setback along the north property line. This is due to building code requirements for fire safety, and windows are not permitted on the 0 setback wall except if they're fire rated. Building 3 proposes a 4-foot setback from the north property line and a 3-foot setback from the south property line. And these will allow for additional space for landscaping and maintenance access to the rear side of the project and property. Per Atascadero Municipal Code Section 9-4.125, a 5-foot side landscape buffer is required within the side yard setback for commercial sites. This can be reduced to 3 feet if decorative pavement is utilized. And under AMC 9-4125, paver can be considered decorative pavement. Due to site topography and narrowness of the lot, portions of the landscape site are designed with no landscape area or a 3-foot landscape buffer. Applicant is seeking a variance from the 3-foot landscape buffer requirements where the site design cannot meet the standard based on the physical narrowness of the parcel. And you see on the site plan below, the areas outlined in red is where the applicant is requesting this variance. And this variance will have to meet certain findings that will then have to be approved by the Planning Commission. Atascadero Municipal Code Section 9-4128 requires that side fencing and screening be a minimum of 6 feet. The proposed project is located adjacent to multifamily site and a residential single-family site which will have to be appropriately screened. Throughout the majority of the site, the applicant is proposing a 2-foot 6-inch high wooden fence on top of a 3-foot retaining wall, or a 5-foot high wooden fence on top of a 6-inch concrete driveway curb. Additionally, a 5-foot wooden fence will be used to screen air conditioning units within the site, and a 4-foot high corrugated metal fence will be used to screen the waste areas within the site. These are the details of the basic dog-eared redwood fencing. On the left, you see the fence proposed that has a 3-foot retaining wall with a 2-foot 6-inch wooden fence on top of it. And on the right of the screen, you see the 6-inch curb with a 5-foot fence on top of it. Here's the site plan with the proposed fencing. In red is the proposed 5-foot fence on top of the curb. And in the green is the wooden fence on top of the retaining wall. The project encompasses an industrial theme for both the residential and commercial units. Some of the primary design components include light sand stucco finish, corrugated metal sliding on buildings, contemporary aluminum windows, industrial metal doors, cable guardrails, corrugated metal screening, and shingle roofing. The balconies on the residential units are proposed to continue this industrial design with contemporary cable balconies, except for the one residential unit facing El Camino Real, which currently has a Juliet balcony proposed. Here are some examples of the architectural design. You see the paneled garage doors that are used for the majority of the garage doors throughout the site. In the top right hand of the slide, you see the Juliet balcony, which differs slightly from the contemporary, more industrial themed balconies. The darker colored area on the buildings is the corrugated metal paneling. And then you also see the contemporary balconies. And the zero setback sidewall, I wanted to include this as it can also fit under the architectural design. This is what you'll see heading south on El Camino Real. Both building 1 and 2 have a zero setback sidewall proposed as seen on the screen here. Staff is recommending that the applicant incorporate the following: darker building colors in order to allow for a color contrast with darker earth tone colors, preferably gray or brown. Increase the corrugated metal siding to midway on the buildings to increase the industrial theme. Ensure that the shutters be proportional to the windows. Consistent matching garage doors throughout the site rather than varied garage doors. Consistent contemporary balconies throughout the site. And then we're also proposing that the applicant seek options to articulate north-facing wall with fire-rated windows or other features to enhance the architectural design of the site. So the north property line isn't just a blank wall. The basic unit layout, there are 6 residential units ranging from 1,072 square feet to 1,788 square feet. Each unit is 2 to 3 bedrooms, designed with private storage space, private laundry facilities, and 1 private garage for each unit. Building 1 will contain approximately 1,725 square feet of retail space facing El Camino Real, and building 2 will contain approximately 1,725 square feet of retail space without El Camino Real frontage. Building 3 will contain approximately 3,292 square feet of commercial wholesale and distribution space. And here's the unit layout of building 1. As you can see on the site plan, there's kitchen, proposed living space, private outdoor open space in the form of a deck, and 2 bedrooms. And on the bottom is commercial retail trade. It's important to note that a portion of the bottom retail floor plan is reserved for the retail storage. And then you also see the townhouse garages, which will be dedicated to the residential units above. This is the architectural design of building 3, unit layout, sorry, of building 3. As you can see, it's slightly larger with 3 bedrooms for each unit atop building 3. Also with private open space towards the rear of the property. And then on the first floor are the 2 townhouse garages, which will be reserved for the residential units, and then also the commercial warehouse space, which has 2 access, one on the north side of the building and one on the south side of the building. And towards the rear of the property, towards the rear of the first floor warehouse space are bathrooms. Each building is proposed to have space for commercial tenant signage in addition to a proposed multi-tenant monument sign. Signage details will be submitted at a later date or prior to Planning Commission. And staff is recommending that the applicant remove the multi-tenant monument sign, as the space proposed along El Camino Real does not appear to be sufficient for a monument sign. We're recommending that the commercial tenant signage be accommodated adjacent to tenant doors, and that all commercial tenant wall signage be externally illuminated and on a timer to ensure compatibility with the residential units. Additionally, the center identification signage can be accommodated on the building frontage along El Camino Real on building 1. These are the current conditions on the site. As you can see, it's a very narrow and challenging parcel. We believe that the applicant has done their best to accommodate all the units and all the uses on site. As you can see on the DRC action form, staff is recommending or conditioning that all street trees be provided along El Camino Real at a spacing of 30 feet on center as required by the code. Tree removal permit shall be sought before proceeding to Planning Commission. A final landscape plan showing additional tree planting along the concrete walkways also be submitted. And this is to expand the landscape area and the usable areas. As we mentioned earlier, the majority of the landscaping is towards the rear of the property, which is hard to access. So we'd like to see additional landscaping where possible around the parking areas and in the shared open space areas. We're also recommending that the height of the perimeter fencing be increased to 6 feet where appropriate, as required by the Atascadero Municipal Code on the side fencing areas. That a detailed sign program be provided before proceeding to Planning Commission, and that any design changes discussed or recommended today per the DRC be incorporated prior to proceeding to Planning Commission. So just to remind you all, today we're seeking direction on site design, including parking, landscaping, setbacks and variance, fencing and screening, architectural design, and signage. And I believe we have the applicant on the phone as well to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. I think we'll go ahead with questions for staff first and then move to the applicant. Does anybody on the, any of our members have any questions for staff?
I have one question, or maybe
Go
more.
ahead,
than one.
Mark and then Dwayne.
Okay, John, I think you mentioned that the staff was recommending that on the north-facing wall of buildings 1 and 2, you were requesting that they add windows. which of course, since it's a zero setback, they're gonna have to be
Mhm.
fire rated. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
My understand, I mean, I'm just, from my experience, some of these rooms are gonna require some natural ventilation anyway, and I don't, like on building 2, the living room, one of the living rooms doesn't have any windows at all to the outside. So that's gonna wind up being a requirement anyways. This building, that's
Mhm.
building 1. If you go to the, well, even this one right here, for example, on the
Yeah.
left, the floor plan on the left may require a window anyway. Is that correct? Is that
Mhm.
right?
There's very little natural light. Yeah. So for
Yeah.
egress and ingress and for light and ventilation, it's going to need more. Now it's challenging to get an operable window on a property line. I don't know how we can do that. You can get fire rated windows, but I don't know that they can be operable. So
Well, since this is a second story, I mean, you're not gonna use it for egress anyway. So I don't know that it needs to be an operable window, but I was just gonna say, first of all, I was gonna say, if it's required, it's kind of out of our hands. It's gonna have to comply with the code for the square footage required. I think it's 10% or something of the floor area for natural light. But I would offer the option of like a clear story window, because when something gets developed on that side of on the other property, there's going to be some privacy issues, and we're always going to have curtains closed, and it's going to be kind of a waste of wall space for a window that's never really going to be used. You're never going to open it up.
That's true.
If just as an option to throw out to the applicant, that if they're required to put windows on that north wall, I would suggest higher clear story windows for natural light and not necessarily a view, because chances are you're going to see a parking lot at some point.
yeah, that was the point. The point there is we have a little bit of a problem architecturally on that wall. And so even if it wasn't windows, it's really the appearance from outside. And what I've seen done in a lot of cases and scenarios like this is they'll do tile insets that appear like windows because you can't really have windows there, or they'll do really high clear story windows that are really at the top level of the room just to let light in. Because the reality is we don't know what's going to get built next door, and someone could build a zero lot line development right next door and put a wall right against that.
Right.
And wouldn't be able to control that. Now, we don't think that's going to happen anytime near future, but we're really just trying to say, well, there might be more opportunities for natural light in this space, and there might be more opportunities for architectural interest on the outside, since it's a real plain, clear view from the street on that blank wall. And, you know, in addition to that, it's a big space that we're concerned about being, you know, tagged for graffiti and things. And
Right.
the more diverse you can make that in architectural.
Right.
Okay.
Well, my feeling is like what you'd said, that you don't know what's going to be developed on that side, and if you've got a wall that's going to have windows on it, that might make the next, you know, the development on that side, they feel like they're limiting how they're going to do it, because now they're going to build a wall that's going to block a window, and so on and so forth. So I like the idea of a faux window that's not a window, it's just a tile inset or something, kind of break up the wall space with that. If we can accommodate, or we or they, whatever, can accommodate the natural light with skylights, then maybe that's an option. But I'm just concerned that, you know, you've got a zero property line here, and if somebody else is going to, if the design, if the next development is such that they really need to put it back to this building, then it's kind of a waste to make these people put windows in those walls.
Sure.
Just my feeling. So, anyhow, and then the other thing is, since we're on this, the landscaping where they're asking for the variance on going down to 3 feet on a couple of the areas. That was another question that I had. Yeah, so I think, yeah, when you find the drawing, there you go. So on the upper portion, on the north side of the well, first on the southern edge, southern property line, there's a 5-foot fence right there that's already separating the properties from an already developed apartment houses, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. So my feeling on that, I'm probably going to jump ahead here, is I'm okay with any sort of a variance on that side. It's sort of the same thing on the other side. If the other side was to have a parking lot that's going to butt right up against that thing, and this is what I wanted to ask Phil, would that development be required, since there's already a 3 foot, or if we went with 3 foot, would that development be required to have a 5-foot buffer to their parking if their parking was immediately adjacent to this?
It would, yeah. Each property has to do their own setback from the property lines. But I will echo John's original comments on this site. This site is so constrained to width The applicant's done everything they can to really try and make it happen on this property. It's been a really creative shoehorn fit into this property. And so I think staff is supportive of them going after different setback reductions for landscape or variances to look at these issues, because it's really hard to make things work on this site without paving the entire site. There's just not a lot of options trying to get the parking and backup spaces and turnaround areas and adequate building area when you're done looking at everything. So I want to commend the architect and the owner for trying to make this all fit. So,
Right.
yeah, so I just wanted to echo those particular themes on this site. But yeah, the adjacent property would have to do a landscape buffer as well, but we just don't know, obviously, when that property is going to develop or if it ever will develop in our lifetimes.
Right. Well, with that being said, the reason I bring that up is, you know, if it was a parking lot that's going to be adjacent to this, then the landscaping is going to get filled in a little bit more. It'll be another 5 feet, so we won't have to worry about that.
Mhm.
If they wind up doing a zero property line building, then the landscaping here is only going to be seen when you're inside this parking lot. So again, I don't think it's that critical of a deal to allow for this variance. And again, I'm probably jumping ahead, but I just want to throw that out since we're on the subject of it. So anyway, that's my feeling on the landscaping and the windows, and that's
Sounds
all I
good.
have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's go ahead to Dwayne. And Heather Newsom, do you have comments? Okay, we'll go with Dwayne, then Heather.
It's just a civil question because I can't really, the drawings are so small. So are these like, the front building it has two double car garage, and then the back building has two singles? Is that what I'm looking at?
I believe they're both single car garages. So there's two single car garages in building 1 and 2. Let me scroll through to find. Yeah, sorry for the quality of these images. So building 1 here, single car garage, single car garage.
Oh, they're side by side.
Side by side, yeah.
And those, so who uses those? The tenant above uses both those?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason that's designed that way instead of just being one regular large door? Or is it just a design element that they wanted to do?
The two single?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's something we can ask the applicant.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. That's all. I just was trying to see what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's a hard site plan to read because it's so narrow.
Yeah.
That's it, Dwayne?
That's it.
Okay, go ahead, Heather. And Emily, did you have questions as well?
Not yet.
Okay, go ahead, Heather.
I looked at the site today and kind of walked around more so the apartment complex because this property is so narrow, it's hard to get a feel for what they're trying to build. Is there any concerns for privacy with all of those apartments with those windows looking onto their property? I mean, what additional privacy can we put in there, or is there, I just felt like they're going to build on top of each other.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand on the visual if they're taking into consideration an apartment complex has a unit that's almost on the property line.
Mhm.
Is that going to be a challenge? And as we look at some of the pictures here, the build out and the congestion that comes into that whole area.
I think
Yes.
it is an interesting situation because you've got essentially a non-conforming project there in a commercial zone, but nevertheless it is there, and we do have to protect their privacy. And this is a sort of a new mixed-use project and a new opportunity to look at those issues. But the width of these properties and the way they're set up make it quite challenging, but it's certainly a consideration we should take into account. And I'm assuming that property next door must have developed prior to city incorporation or prior to this area becoming a commercial zone. Do you know much about that history, John, on the adjacent?
I don't know much about the history. I do know that with the fencing, they're meeting what's proposed in the code, but maybe we could examine additional screening for this project.
Because you listed the different sizes and wood fencing and some privacy.
Mhm.
That apartment complex has a pool I don't want to say in the center, but up front.
Yeah.
And so you have families that are there. Now we're putting in a retail center next to it that's going to have a bunch of traffic,
Yeah.
some privacy, and some trying to keep residential people from being in this area. I think the higher the fence, the better.
Yeah.
Only because that apartment complex is so high. You have the bedroom windows looking in and down into these lots. You know, they could be, kids like to put things out windows.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
I worry
something to
about a
consider.
safety issue. I worry about the kids going, hey, this looks cool, let's go out.
Mhm.
And more so on that property line as we're looking at a fence, because again, several of the units are built almost on that property line with very little spacing with the boundary and the wood fencing and the curb and the stuff that we're going to put into an active driveway for retail.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have challenges in it itself. I'm just saying from a bystander's just trying to look at that property and make it work.
Yeah.
You guys did an amazing amount of work on paper. Those are all my questions.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Heather. Emily, any questions now?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead with some questions, and perhaps this would be the applicant instead of you, John, but is there any phasing of this project, or is it all going in at the same time?
I believe it's all going in at the same time, but that's probably better answered by the applicant.
Okay, is the applicant on board?
Yeah. Is there a way to loop the applicant in, Luke or Kelly?
I will. So it's Clayton Cook, correct?
Yes, correct. Or Aaron Ganage.
Yeah, I'm here now, I think. Thank you, Luke.
You're welcome.
Okay, Clayton, did you hear the question? We were wondering if there was going to be phasing on this project, or is this going to be built all at the same time?
You know, it's a good question, and I don't have an honest answer for you because once I get approval, then the bank will approve how all the financing happens, and it would be my preference to have it all done at the same time. And I don't know what roadblocks I might have in accomplishing that. So I don't, any answer I give you is a lie because I don't have the future. I don't see it.
Okay, as I had some concerns if it was going to be phased, that there may be storage of materials and hazardous things left when the residential end may be built in one portion and
Right.
be out and about and so forth.
I don't see how I could do any construction there with even the current building, because the goal would be to keep the rental in the front to have the income.
Sure.
But I don't see it would even fall within the setbacks of having the 20-foot wide road past them or having that be safe for the current residents. So I'm going to be planning for and shooting for doing the whole thing at once.
Okay, well, that might be information that would be helpful to have for the planning commission when it goes there, not as essential for us. The question regarding the condominiums, that was this going to be the business owner was going to own the upstairs residence as well, or you're going to have the business rented out and the upstairs would be a condo separately?
So all the condos are specific to being residences. So I may or may not move into one myself at some point when my kids all leave the house. But I'm not sure if I'm totally clear on the question, but
okay,
they're meant to be rentals. What's
yeah,
up?
we've had other mixed uses where they had the person owning a business and they would rent out or use the downstairs themselves and own the upstairs and live there, just like an old style business used to be in a downtown.
Right. I've thought about that, and I've thought about that's why I wanted to have it as a condominium, so I could potentially even sell the whole front building to someone that wanted to have a live work unit and perpetuate that. But I can't control that within the current zoning parameters and the kind of project I'm trying to do on this lot. If you can show me a way forward to make that happen, I could.
Well, it isn't really
feedback here.
except there may be differences and problems with parking, is what I thought. That you may have had people parking in residential areas that are doing commercial down below or blocking garages or other things. And if we're going to reduce this by one spot, we have to be thinking this over very carefully, whether it would be designated or other.
Right. So I'm not a professional here. I appreciate everyone's communication and bi-directional communication in the future to have that communication so I can adjust the lot and adjust the project to be what everyone needs it to be. So if we needed to take more retail space out and add another parking lot, it's nothing that we can't do. I was trying to keep the design between the buildings, the front two buildings, exactly identical for consistency. And part of that space is for storage. So we have a commercial retail spot in front and then have their storage to separate where they store all their goods. The back building's really meant for my office, and I only have 3 employees that can work. So I don't have a lot of parking requirements myself. And I've been in business with that business for about over 20 years, so I don't see that changing anytime soon. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So
I don't know if that helps answer the question, but.
Well, it's helpful to know that you'll be there on the site, actually. The parking may need to be designated for residential or commercial or other, so they could say, you know, parking for unit whatever, you know, somehow make it so there's not a conflict within the parking spaces, since you're asking for one less parking spot than truly is required.
Right. I mean, I want everything to fall within whatever the city will approve and allow to have happen. But really, I'm trying to put in place something where my company can own what I'm renting. And the 2 units in front may end up being for my own business if I grow and I'm more successful. So really, that's my thought process, is just having more of the stuff that I sell, and I don't require any parking for any employees. I only need the 3 employees I have. All my employees are remote employees. They all work in the major markets of New York, LA, San Francisco. And we're simply just shipping the products from here and recording the transactions from here. So it's the parking lots, the parking units, there was a question on that. We wanted the renters or the tenants to feel like they had their own property or their own parking and control of that, and place to store stuff or park their car for electric vehicle. That was protected as a separate and individual stall. And that's why we have them as segregated units, not open units. Because I was just predicting that if I was a renter, if I had one of them, that's what I would want eventually.
Okay, very good.
To answer the other question on the view from the front, I believe it's the front 2 apartments that are the closest. They're probably 15 feet away from my property line. I don't know what angle those 2 windows are at that could see into our property line, but we could probably raise the fence to a specific angle that accommodates a lack of view or a lack of viewing them for privacy purposes, and could calculate that accordingly.
Okay.
If desired, but it wouldn't be consistent through the whole project. It may not make sense. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Corey. And one question, what is a Juliet balcony?
I can answer that. Yeah, sorry, my name is Aaron Ganaj. I'm the designer on the project. A Juliet balcony is basically like a faux detail that you put at a window that looks, it's kind of like an old French style where you can open up the window, and it has area for putting plants and landscaping. So that it's that kind of a detail.
Okay, could we go ahead and put the screen up so we can see what it looks like?
From a distance, it looks like a balcony, but you can't stand on it. Basically it's a fake balcony. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like
So it's this one here.
wider.
Yeah, sorry for the image. It's a little small.
Okay, and I know that staff had said they wanted proportional shutters. Are these not considered proportional that we see in this rendering?
I think we just wanted to ensure that for the final designs, they are proportional. We couldn't tell based on the level of detail if these were or not.
Okay, and when we look at the garage doors, it looks like one is taller than the other. Are they on a slope, or it just looks odd?
Yeah, so because of the slope of the property, there's obvious difficulties because of the narrowness, but then also because of the drainage issue of the property. So part of doing all the pavers were for a lot of different things, aesthetics, and for getting more impervious surface because of back of the lot falls off towards the highway, and we wanted to reduce the amount of drainage or drainage issues on site. So the garages that you see there, you kind of see the dash line below is the existing grade. So we're trying to not impact the existing site or grade into it too much. So that's the first building has a step in it in order to accommodate that slope of the site.
Okay. And a question regarding the windows, and this might be for the architect. Some of them seem to be vertical and others are horizontal sliders, and it just looks kind of odd to have a mixture like they are. Is that purposeful, or was there a reason for this?
Yeah, some of them are, off of bedrooms. I mean, we could have them all not have any kind of, vertical grid in them, but just having the operational aspect, you're going to need some ventilation in the bedrooms and the other living spaces. You don't necessarily need that in the commercial, and we can put in, some mullions in those fixed windows so that it'll look aesthetically the same. Yeah, I honestly didn't dive in too deep into the window design. It was more of trying to get the overall aspect of everything.
Okay. I think maybe it's because some of them appear to be very small, so they're kind of a single hung and they're more vertical, and the others are sliders from side to side. It's just the ones that are to the right of the stairwell that kind of catch my eye as being odd.
Okay.
I'm not sure why, but it doesn't look uniform, but somehow it looks off.
Okay.
Just my opinion. And while we're looking at the wall that's down below, Phil, you were saying there's some kind of tiles that would go in. Would they be like a horizontal band in the middle, or what were you thinking?
So there's many different options. I think what we're seeing as staff is the wall needs some additional treatment, and perhaps that could start with the same metal corrugation that's on the base of the building, the other portions, and then perhaps other areas of the building. What I've seen done is a tile pattern that actually looks like windows. And so at a glance, it would look like there's squares of black tile that basically they're framed out in stucco or whatever else the material is on the building, and at a glance appears like windows. So basically just to create architectural interest and break up the mass of the building as viewed to a driver heading south, because that building is going to stick right out there and be a great big blank wall. And so really, I think it's up to the architect to come up with some ideas as to how to articulate that and make that read better, so it's not just a very blank wall. I think there's options there, and I want to kind of sound like we're flexible on that, and maybe it's best left with an architect, but there should be something happening with that.
Okay, and Phil, in terms of the code, I heard Mark say that he thought that there had to be windows for egress and fire, but it's second story, and so that wouldn't be the case. Could you explain what the facts are on that?
Well, as long as they do have to have windows that they can actually get out of on the second story in case of a fire, for a fire truck to come up with a ladder. So as long as there are those egress windows in the rooms upstairs, they're going to be okay. And perhaps they have those on their sides. So that's something they're going to be required to show in their construction permit anyway. I don't know whether this side of the building could work for that anyway, because the reality is at some point in the future, someone else could build a building right up against that wall on the other property, and they would no longer have that egress opportunity. So for that option, that really has to occur on other portions of the building. Really, I think what we're talking about here is two things: opportunities for natural light, which could occur through the roof, and then opportunities for architectural interest as appearing from the outside.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate you guys' comment, and honestly, because it's on the zero, zero property line, it's like you guys are saying, you know, you have it, what's going to look like now, and then potentially what will happen in the future. It's hard to predict, but somebody could, if they, you know, bought or chose to develop next door, throw something up, and then whatever we did on this side of the building would be, you wouldn't see it all. So I'm definitely open to doing something to break it up. The difficulty in putting any kind of windows in this wall is the building code doesn't allow within 3 feet, if I remember correctly, any kind of windows, whether it's fire rated or not. It has to be beyond 3 feet, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. I checked with our building official, and you couldn't have functioning windows on the 0 side setback.
Can I address some of this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the comments I think came up in the staff report that I read was the corrugated metal finish that's on the base of the building. I think it was suggested that it be raised up to go to do half the building, and then, you know, to kind of break it up or whatever. And I was thinking, you know, that's one option certainly, but I'm looking at this, I was thinking that maybe the corrugated can stay where it's at. You know, you created that line, and then with the color change, a little bit, you know, it's darkest on the bottom, a little bit lighter, and then at the upper half of it, another lighter color. And in that band that we see on those 2 upper drawings, actually 3 of them except the big blank wall, like a belly band for lack of a better term, you know, that should continue all the way around, even on this big blank wall. And if that corrugated siding as well, and in the color change, that alone is going to break it up. You'll have corrugated, a little bit darker color, then that stripe, and then another color, or not darker, but lighter color, and so on. And I think that will certainly help. I still like the idea of the faux windows, but I think just a color shift to kind of give it some foundation, some base, where that start off with a lighter color and work your way down, would be helpful to that big blank wall.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mark.
All right, thank you. Was that Aaron?
Yeah, that was Aaron.
Are you the architect?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm just thinking of, you know, just kind of thinking of ways to make this work without super expensive. And you're right. I think openings are not going to be an option. And even if they were an option, they're going to be super expensive because of the 1 hour rating requirement, or even 2 hour rating, whatever it's going to be. But then at some point, future development could completely mess that up. So anyhow, that's all.
This is Corey. I had a quick question along those lines, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a list of faux options that are available for this to try and solve this visual deficiency, for lack of better words?
We can certainly, I can certainly work with Aaron to get a list going before planning commission.
Because I mean, there's even decals that are probably vinyl, like you do on flooring, that could almost feel like they're clear and looking into the apartment.
Okay, very good. Is there any more questions for staff? And I'm going to go ahead and let either Clayton or Aaron give us the a little information about their plans for the buildings and so forth. Seeing no more questions, go ahead, either one of you.
Did you want questions for us, or just kind of an overview of?
No, I just was wondering if you had some kind of presentation on what you were doing that you wanted us to hear.
Sure. Yeah. You know, stepping back and looking at the overall project, you know, Corey came to me and he has, like you heard, a desire to use one of these buildings and potentially live in the upstairs himself, and trying to find a way to make that work. He had a need. He bought this property, and there are, you know, some difficulties because it is so narrow, but I think we found a way to you know, make it work, and we're definitely going to fine tune, you know, with your guys' input and John's, to make it, you know, even better. But the you know, the difficulties, because it was so narrow, lend itself to some things that are not preferable in my mind, but it was, making lemonade. And, obviously not having a whole lot of landscaping, particularly in the front half where, you got building 1 and 2. But because of the length of the property and having anything on the rear, you had to have, the shared driveway, the fire turnaround, and we tried to, we were saving some of the existing oak trees, the ones that, arborist recommended that were, good and lively. And I think that as far as the idea of all the 3 buildings, having the commercial down below and some living space above, definitely lends itself to, like Corey was saying, somebody that has a business that, a live work situation could be, very good. They can have the space down below, live up above, and then even potentially have, one of the other units that in that building that they rent out is, it would be desirable. And then as far as the parking goes, with the 2 front buildings that are really kind of the only ones that are a little bit tricky as far as what you were bringing up with regards to just the commercial and the residential, not having, basically having some dedicated parking. We would just have to be creative about making that work and, dedicating certain areas. There is the space in between building 1 and 2 that we have some parking that I would think that it would lend itself to being the dedicated parking for the residential or guests of the residential. So.
Very good. I believe we did have one question for either Clayton or Aaron regarding the single garages for the residential. Was there a reason they're separate singles, or could it be combined into a double?
Yeah, the reason for it's a separate single is because there's 2 residential condominiums above. So each one would have its own covered parking garage where they would have storage, be able to park. Yeah, just for seeing it on the side of being a renter or wanting to live there, having a space where they could park their car or have storage. I've rented before, and I know that's definitely a very nice thing to have, and you look at it as an advantage. So if it was a combined garage, it would just be tricky with 2 different tenants, 2 different people. How would you work? That was the thinking.
And I'm assuming the drawings are very small for us, so I'm assuming it's really not a stacked 2-car in each space. It's just a 1-car, but it would accommodate a truck or other larger vehicle?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for the applicant from the members? I'm seeing shaking head saying no. So we can't see you. Emily, did you have any questions for the applicant?
None, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, Luke or Annette, do we have any calls coming in or emails that we need to do for public comment?
I see no emails on my end.
Okay, Luke?
I do not have anybody wishing to comment on this item.
Very good. I'm going to close public comment then for this item and bring it back to the Design Review Committee. We'll go over the staff recommendations, and I'm going to ask for yeses or nos. So if you could raise your thumb or put it down or wave or something to get my attention. Staff is recommending architectural design choices of darker building colors in order to allow for a color contrast with darker earth tone colors, preferably gray or brown. Is a Design Review Committee okay with that recommendation?
I think, that kind of follows what Mark was suggesting. So that what he was saying sounded like a good idea.
I concur with that.
Okay. Emily?
Yes, I agree with Dwayne that I liked Mark's recommendations and think the combination of what staff has recommended and what Mark suggested would be ideal.
Okay, very good. So we're in favor of that. Increase the corrugated metal siding to midway on the buildings. If we could get the drawing up there of where you want it to be, that would be helpful. So the corrugated is currently about halfway in the windows on the bottom floor, and you want it to go up to what Mark called the belly band. Is that correct, Phil?
It seems that that would be lower than the belly band. You'd have the corrugated metal, then you'd have a space, then you'd have a belly band. And maybe, I believe Mark was discussing even a third color or something different, but it seems like the color, basically what we're saying is the architectural theme and color should be carried on all sides of the building. So probably just, I think the DRC should take action on that, but I think our suggestion was the corrugated metal, a belly band, and a consideration of either the appearance of windows or some other feature.
Yeah, if I could just expand or just reiterate. Yeah, I mean, I understood what you were asking. You were saying that the corrugated go up to that band that we see at the midpoint of the building, and then a different color above it. So you essentially have two colors. And I'm just throwing out an option to say if the corrugated stayed where it's at, and then you added a color above it, and then that strip across the belly band is another, maybe a contrasting color, and then above that is another color. So yeah, I mean, I'm suggesting the color added, but that whole theme, if it wrapped all the way around the building to this big blank wall, I think that'd be very helpful. Either way, I mean, I would prefer the way I'm describing. I just think it would be more interesting, but the corrugated going up to that belly band, I suppose, is an option, and then you just have two colors. And in that belly band being a contrasting separation termination point, if you will. Anyway, that's where my thought was.
Okay, design review committee, would you like it to go up to the belly band with the corrugated, or you want a separate color in that middle portion between the corrugated and the belly band? Let's go with Heather Newsom first, your opinion?
I'm in support of Mark. If they feel that it's going to work for their design, I'm good with it.
Okay, Dwayne?
Yeah, that's essentially what I was saying before, is I think that, leaving it where it is, have another color, and that would bring a lot more interest to everything. So I like that.
Emily? Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I think that taking the corrugated to the belly band might actually be too much of it on that north-facing wall. So I agree with Mark's suggestion that we have an additional color.
Okay, thank you. I also agree with Mark's recommendation. So that's the one we'd like to have passed on, Annette. The third is ensure that the shutters be proportional to the windows. Anybody have a problem with that?
My only question on that is what is considered to be proportional? Because one way to look at proportional is that these shutters would be such that if they were to close, they would cover the windows. And I think that, stationary shutters like this are not always the size of the windows. They're just decorative on the side. So what I see here appears to be proportional to the design, but certainly if they were operable, they're not as big as the window, so they wouldn't cover it up. I don't see that as being a problem personally. They look proportional to me.
Okay, I see heads nodding, so I think that we can have the applicant work with staff on the shutters that we didn't want closing shutters. We wanted light. So we want them to be the same size on all the windows, however, or at least to look okay.
Right.
Okay, consistent matching garage doors throughout the site. Were there some garage doors down on building 3 that were not going to look like the garage doors on the other buildings?
Yeah, it does appear, as you can see, just on building 1, along the shared driveway access, the garage door appears to be different from the garage door to what I believe is the retail storage area, which faces the space in between building 1 and 2. So we were just suggesting that the garage doors be consistent throughout the site.
Okay, so what we're looking at, John, the 2 garage doors on the top would match, and what they're proposing down below on the right is the more industrial garage door.
Yeah. So we're
And-
just suggesting that they use preferably the paneled ones and use those throughout the site.
Okay, Phil, is there any reason that you would want to have them different for security in a building with supplies inside or something?
I think that's entirely up to the applicant in that case. In terms of
Okay, why
security.
don't we do a little compromise here and have staff work with the applicant regarding the garage doors to make them pleasing and compatible to each other?
Perfect.
Okay, is that good for everybody on the design review? Nod your head if you would.
Yes.
Okay,
Roberta?
very good.
This is Councilmember Newsom. I did have one other thing you had brought up about the windows. I'd like to see consistency with the windows as well as the doors, that they're matching, they're complementary of each other.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be good too. So let's put that down on the list, and the consistent contemporary balconies throughout the site. So Phil, was the thought that there would be additional balconies? You don't like the Juliet balcony. What does this mean here?
John, can you fill in on our thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we're just recommending that the industrial theme be consistent along the El Camino Real frontage. So yeah, basically just replacing that Juliet balcony with a contemporary or a more industrial looking balcony.
Okay, Mark, what's your thoughts on this when you're the architect?
Mark, you're muted.
Sorry about that. If you're talking about you're asking me about the Juliet balconies, Roberta? Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes the wall a little bit more interesting. It's not really a functional piece. It's just more decorative. So I'm indifferent to it. I think it's a nice feature to add to it. I think gives it more interest. So I wouldn't remove it. If you're gonna take it off, I would replace it with something different. But I think still something should be there. I think that's going to be a very visible side. If I'm not mistaken, that faces El Camino, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that's a really neat feature to have on that window that's going to face El Camino. So
Okay.
I'm in favor of it.
All right, do I have some nods in agreement with that, or, all right, I'm seeing nods. Emily, are you good with that too?
Yes.
Okay, leave the Juliet balcony, we like it.
Sounds good.
So I think I think we've discussed this before, but I want to make this crystal clear to staff that we want articulation on the north facing wall, the one that would have had windows but can't. So I would like the applicant to work with staff to come up with some kind of more visually pleasing exterior on that side. Is that okay for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And let's see, I had comments from, I believe it was Heather Newsom, about the higher the fence, the better. Do we need to stipulate how high that fence would be, Phil or John?
I think that's something to go beyond the 6 feet. That would be part of the conditional use permit approval through Planning Commission.
I'm mostly concerned about the neighbors and just providing a little bit of privacy. So however the applicant wants to work with staff on that, I feel like that other apartment complex is so close to that property line. He talked about the changing of the angle so it's not a direct visual into someone's bedroom, that kind of stuff, kind of working through if you can correct it with a height of a fence or an angling of a window. I'm flexible on that. You guys know the design more than I do of what's feasible, but know that security, safety, all of that for your neighbors is a key component.
Perfect. We'll look at that. We typically like to limit it to 7 foot because once you get over 7 or 8 feet, then what happens is you begin to also limit natural light and solar access into their property. So those are things we have to look at too. competing interests on both sides, but we will definitely look at the privacy issue, the window issue, and see what we can do with fencing to satisfy the privacy.
And I brought most of it up because I think you don't have the ability to do any landscaping to kind of mitigate that with whatever shrubage that can, trees or whatever can grow, bamboo, any of that sort of stuff that can block and give them a little bit of closure, because you're doing one hardscape to another hardscape. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Is that okay with the members of the design review? Let's see a nod or a no.
I just want to throw in the mix that I know that on the side there where those condos are is a lot of mature landscaping, mature trees and stuff like that. So some of them, I don't know. I mean, might already be accomplishing that, in that's something to look at when you're working with this project, I think.
Okay, so let's alter this a little bit and say, let's have the applicant work with staff to come up with sufficient fencing to provide privacy for both sides.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I don't think we need to talk about the variance. Staff is recommending that the signage be altered on the site and remove the multi-tenant monument sign, as the space along El Camino Real does not appear sufficient for a monument sign. Commercial tenant signage can be accommodated adjacent to tenant doors. Any thought on that?
I think the less structural items they need to add to this already small lot, the better. I'm good with the signage on the buildings itself, as long as it adheres to our sign policy. I think it gives it a little bit of character too. Nobody, I think, wants a billboard out front.
I think we could all agree with that one. There was also that the signage would be externally illuminated, not the can lights, and on a timer to ensure compatibility. I think that's a given with residential and commercial side by side.
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
And one final one that we really didn't talk about, but is a concern for me. This is regarding whether skylights could be put in on the one building with no windows on the one side. Is that something that we could stipulate, that they put in some kind of light? I know it can be oppressive to be in a building without adequate windows. Any thoughts? That anybody like that one or not?
I think I think it might be required by code anyway, but I'm certainly open to exploring adding more natural light. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Roberta. I mean, personally, that's exactly what I did to my house. So.
Okay, very good. I think that we'd like to have that put in also as one of our recommendations. And a last one regarding garbage for the residential. Are they going to have cans individually that go out to El Camino, or what's the arrangement proposed for garbage cans?
I believe there's one outdoor space area for waste storage that will be screened by corrugated metal fence.
So it would be a common garbage dumpster, and the garbage company would come on down and get it?
As far as I understand. I'm not sure if Aaron wanted to.
Yeah, can you point that out on the plan? Because I'm not finding it.
I believe it's right here in front of the bicycle storage.
Oh, okay.
Got it. Aaron says there's 2 on chat.
Oh, and then perhaps right over here. Maybe we can let Aaron in. Again, I know this was an issue. We did require him to add some additional waste storage during the design process.
Okay.
Am I still in? I'm just curious.
Is that Corey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Corey.
I was just curious about some things until Aaron chimes in. On the privacy of the windows, I know what you're trying to say, Heather. I don't know I can control people's privacy or be responsible for that in part of my design. If you look at the Galleria apartment complexes or condominiums, everyone can see right across through everyone's windows. It's just whether they have their blinds closed or not. And the blinds in those apartment buildings are constantly closed now because it's a Section 8 property. It's been really a slumlord, been running it for years. And they already can see in those windows from the level of the house they're at now. So whatever we do is going to improve the property, but I don't expect I can ever come up with a design that controls the people's privacy and their own ability to close their blinds or not. So that bothers me a little bit because I don't think I can ever control that in a design.
I think
I think we know that. We'd like you to work with staff in terms of the fencing. So it's one of those
Okay.
issues that's just tough when it's on a very long, narrow lot like this.
Yeah, my other concern was that we, at the last minute, without a consensus, added the windows besides the garage doors being all the same. So a restroom is going to have a different size window than the other windows, or as a living room or a dining room or a front door window, or I don't know what that means as far as having all the.
Corey, they're talking about the appearance, not necessarily the size and shape, but that they are all looking, proportionally the same. And we can.
But I think that they were. I'm not trying to be obstinate, but they were all the same. There was only two that were similar size that were facing different directions. So are we just saying that there's one window out of place that needs to change direction?
No, when you look at the design, it's really hard to get a practical feel for it. So you come to a design review committee and you want us to give a little bit of feedback, and looking at it, it doesn't, like Roberta had mentioned, it's so hard on a flat surface. It doesn't do it justice. So it's really hard to get the visual idea of what you're doing. All I'm recommending is that it be complementary to each other. That they don't compete with each other. I'm not telling you what size they need to be. And I understand you don't want to have a see-through window in a bathroom, or there's certain things. I get that. I'm not the architect in this group. So it's just a comment. We talk about privacy just to be good stewards to our neighbor. I understand that you're not going to be able to appease every single privacy concern, but you did bring up about fencing and things. So we start to look at what is that fencing all used for? Privacy, just kind of looking for giving a little bit of feedback to you. We're giving it up to you, the applicant, and the city to work through. These are just our ideas as we incorporate a total different use into a property that already has a tight apartment complex. I mean, they have their own set of issues, and they've been there a long time. So your project just happens to be the one that's in front of us, and we openly have this conversation and respect that you're trying to do business with Atascadero, and that you brought a nice design based on your limitations on that lot. So I do want you to know I appreciate it. It's just giving feedback of what we're thinking. We know you and the staff can work together very well.
So those are just ideas. So skylights don't have to be put in, or they do have to be put in?
I wasn't talking about skylights. You want
No, but that was the next thing I was going to ask about.
Yeah, well, they're right, and that's something that I just, an oversight looking at the whole thing, but there will be the need for natural light or natural ventilation in some of those areas that, don't. The bedrooms, all the egress issues are fine, but having some natural light or natural ventilation basically on that property line side is something we have to work on, and it's kind of difficult, but we'll figure it out. Back to the trash, so the one that is by the bicycle parking, that one will basically be for building 3, the commercial and residential, and then there is the space basically in between building 1 and 2. There is a trash enclosure. There's basically ACs in the middle, and then trash enclosure on either side for the commercial space. And then for the residential, the trash will be inside the garages. For the residential, you kind of see those a little boxed out in the garage that have their waste. So the idea would be they pull them out that all gets pulled out for the trash guy when it comes through, and then gets the dumpster by the bicycle.
Well, I got a problem with that. When you put them inside a very small garage, it makes it hard for the tenant to park their car and have any storage. Personally, I think it would be better just to have a dumpster for everybody, and it'll be less confusing, and it won't have to be dragged out to El Camino, which may be a problem. If you're going to have the trash company come in and pick up dumpsters, it seems like that's the time and the place to put your trash in.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from other members here?
I agree. I think with the mixed use, it's really hard to have two different solutions on a weekly basis for trash collection.
Dwayne?
Yeah, we always run into this issue. So actually, I guess the question in my head is like, well, do we have other situations similar to this, and what are they doing? What seems to work, I guess, is my question. And I don't know, Phil, if you have any answer for that, or do we have to reinvent it?
This comes back to a very, very narrow site. It's really, really tight. There could be an additional combination on site to have these rollers, but or they could combine to utilize the common trash receptacle. Oftentimes, these kinds of things end up working themselves out. With limited parking on the site, limited street frontage, and independent garages, as long as we make sure that through the conditional use permit process, they're going to preserve those garages for parking. I think they'll work out naturally where that trash needs to go. And I don't know if we need to get to that level of detail, but it might be good just to provide a comment now for the variance and for the conditional use permit for mixed use, that prior to going there, we need to analyze a solution to making something improve, making it happen. It does look really tight. So that's something that may need a little more work that we may not be able to perfect or resolve today.
Okay, that sounds good, that we want that worked out prior to the conditional use permit approval. How about that?
There you go.
Sounds good.
Okay, very good. And in terms of the parking, do we need to make sure that there's not competition for those parking spaces and problems with blocking garages and so forth, or would that be handled at the Planning Commission?
I believe the parking reduction would be a planning commission decision.
And right now, the parking reduction is just one space, is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to note, I'm not sure if this was included in the staff report, but just so that you don't have to worry about parking in front of the garages, that curb where the walkway is will be painted red. And that's a fire department request. So people won't, hopefully won't park there.
Okay, very good. Let's leave it alone then and move on. I think we've got it. Phil, is there anything that we've left out?
I think we exhausted all of our topics on this one. I think we did well.
Did we talk, are we still need to talk about the variance for the landscaping?
Well, no, that's a planning commission topic.
Okay.
I think staff believes that because of the narrow property and the emergency access we need to have here, and because of the parking dimensions, we can make the findings to support that at the planning commission. But I don't know that we should go any further from the DRC level on that issue, and we'll leave that to the planning commission to see if those findings can be made.
Very
So
good.
I can't recommend to myself later to do that.
We'll leave that to your conscience, Dwayne.
Okay.
All right. Aaron or Clayton, any questions for the committee?
I would just like to say, John, you did a great job presenting, and I don't have everyone's names memorized, but I thank you all for your feedback, and I think we'll end up with something that's really workable for Atascadero at the end of this.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
I second that. I appreciate all you guys' time, and yeah, it's definitely some good feedback on this big of a project, and trying to get all the little details you miss, but that's just part of the process.
Very good. We appreciate you bringing this towards us, and look forward to seeing a very nice project when you're completed. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Okay, let's move on to our next item, the Van Deventer Commercial Park. And I know Heather Newsom has to leave at 4, so let's try to hurry through the staff portion and get her comments in if we can before she has to go. So staff report, please.
And
Do we
great.
do,
I'll give a
before
little,
we get staff report, can we do ex parte? Specifically, I just want to put on the record that I do have a project that I'm working on directly next door to this one. I have no vested interest in it, so no vested interest. There's no monetary interest in for me other than he's my client next door. So I just want to make sure that that's clear and on the record. Other than that, I haven't talked to Van Deventer about his project, so no ex parte.
Hey, Mark, did you want to step down or you want to continue
No,
comment?
I don't need to. I talked to Phil about it earlier today. I was worried. I wanted to know if there was going to be a conflict, but just because I'm the architect on that project, there is no conflict. If I had a vested interest in it monetarily, then there would be, but I don't have that. I'm not ownership of it in any way, so there is no conflict. I think we're all good.
Very good. And Ned, if we could get those comments in the minutes, that would be helpful. Okay, let's go ahead. And is the applicant here as well today?
I don't see them on, but maybe Luke or John knows.
Yes, they're on a phone call.
Great. Well, while we get that lined up, John's going to present this item as well, but I wanted to give a little history and background what's been happening on this particular property, because there has been a lot of questions that have come up from the public about this property, as it has changed ownership over the last few months, and there is an active code enforcement case on the property associated with the use of a vacant property and outdoor storage, and the city believes there's been some construction done here without permits. But I don't want to focus on those topics today, and I don't want to have the DRC get bogged down by those particular topics today, because the proposal before us is actually a really nice project that appears to be consistent with the commercial park zoning district. The applicant is proposing to build some nice buildings on this property and do a nice project over certain phases. We will focus on a couple of topics that we're concerned about in terms of the construction of the walls and the visibility from Highway 101. But in the end, I think that the architect has put together a nice package. And I think that the city is going to continue to work with Mr. Van Deventer on gaining compliance with the on-site storage that's happening on a portion of this property, and continue to work with us on getting the necessary approvals and permits. So that's all I'm going to add at that point, and I want to have John go ahead and give you the background and run through the presentation briefly on the proposed project.
All right, thanks, Phil. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
All right, so the project is the Van Deventer Commercial Park at 1600 and 1610 El Camino Real. Here's the zoning map. It is commercial park zoning, or CPK. The project is proposed on 2 current parcels, which the applicant has stated they would merge at a later date. The 2 parcels are totaling about 1.71 acres. Both parcels have El Camino Real frontage and are highly visible from Highway 101. Here's an aerial. The dashed line in the middle is the property line. In yellow, there's an existing structure, which is an office building, or a non-conforming residential use that is now being rehabilitated to be used as an office. And it's important to note that those permits have been issued for tenant improvements, and that's currently underway. Phil kind of went over the background already, but but just to go through this quickly, the previous application was for a contract construction services storage yard that was submitted in 2019 and then withdrawn. Currently, the site is being used for unpermitted outdoor contract construction storage. It appears there has been some grading and trenching already carried out the site. However, no permits have been issued for the overall development plan. We'll be seeking DRC direction on site design and access, specifically the location of retention basins and frontage improvements, design compatibility, architecture and signage, retaining wall and wall height, specifically on the perimeter walls, landscaping, fencing, screening, and parking. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new commercial park site that includes 3 buildings totaling 20,888 square feet, including off-site and on-site improvements, and the rehabilitation of the existing structure of just over 2,000 square feet for office use. No specific land use at this time. The tenant has provided some potential land uses, including office and restaurant and some commercial storage, indoor storage space. However, any future use of the site will be subject to business license issuance and potentially conditional use permit issuance based on the use and the zoning district. And as we mentioned, outdoor storage is not an allowed use in the CPK zoning district. The project will require frontage improvements under separate permits, and CEQA is currently under review and will be based on the final site plan. So here's the overall site plan. You can kind of see the phases of the project. We're considering the existing office that's currently, or the existing structure that is currently being converted to an office to be phase A, and the rest of the project, the commercial park, to be phase B. Building 1 is towards the rear of the property. Building 2 is on the north side of the property facing El Camino, or with El Camino Real frontage. And building 3 is on the south end of the property. It's important to note the property line on the south side of the property, there's a city drainage easement. And then there are also 2 spaces for outdoor storage, but the total square footage of that outdoor storage space is less than 1,000 square feet.
John, one thing I wanted to clarify on this phasing plan, which I don't know if we've heard from the applicant, and maybe when we talk to the applicant later on, I want to understand what phase is the grading and retaining wall, because I don't see it in these construction phases. Is that going to happen in conjunction with the construction of building 1, or is it going to happen prior to building 1 and then there'll be a time period where there's just a wall? So those are some things that I think that I want to make sure the DRC understands and the applicant understands as we go through this, but we don't need to worry about that at this moment, but I just want to bring in a heads up to that question later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Phil. And just to go through these phases in a bit more detail, this is what the applicant has provided so far in terms of the phasing information. Phase B1 is construction of building 1, along with the on-site improvements and the El Camino Real signage. Phase B2 would be the construction of building 2 along the north property line. And phase B3 would be construction of building 3 with additional on-site improvements, and also the construction of a highway kiosk signage structure, if that is also permitted. The site is highly visible from El Camino Real and Highway 101. There's 1 driveway proposed for access to the commercial park and 1 driveway for office, 1 driveway for access to the existing structure, which is being converted to an office. The 3 buildings are largely internally facing, and they're facing the project site and the proposed parking areas. However, building 2 and the existing structure both have frontage along El Camino Real. As I mentioned, there's limited outdoor storage space. There's just over 6,000 square feet of walkways and patios for pedestrian access throughout the site, and 5 light poles will be located throughout the site to provide lighting for the parking lot and the entire site. Retention basins are proposed to be located towards the rear of the property to meet stormwater. They're proposed to be located under utility lines and also within a City of Atascadero drainage easement. A portion of the retention basin that is currently proposed to be within the city easement will need to be removed. And any adjustment of the retention basins may cause substantial site redesign if indeed these retention basins have to be adjusted.
John, can we stop right there and have a question for you or for Phil? If they have to redesign this for an easement that's existing in the back, and we're going to have to see it again, should we not table this and see it all together when they get this utility line and drainage easement issue worked out?
I think we should have our Public Works Director, if he's available, Nick DeBar, weigh in on that topic, because my discussion so far on that is that it may not need a substantial redesign, and that it might be okay with some minor adjustments, and it may not dramatically affect the site plan. So I think one option is to continue the review as we're planning to do now. And if it turns out that it does need significant review, then it's at the applicant's time to come back and have a whole nother review. Or if we do feel like it's going to have an impact, then perhaps we should go with that particular option. But let's see, is Nick DeBar available on the line to weigh in on that topic now, or can we have him maybe at the end of this presentation weigh in?
Looked at panelists, it doesn't look like he's on anymore.
Yeah, he's in the meeting. He just
Oh, yeah.
unmuted, so he should be available.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Nick.
Yes, we can.
All right. It was funny. I unmuted my little speaker mic thing here and it kicked me off. So I don't know. I think it was something Phil did.
It's so easy to blame community. I'll take it. That's fine.
I'm just gonna pile on, Phil. So the retention basin that's proposed in that the city has an 8-foot drainage easement. It's got a stormwater pipe that goes down a portion of it, and so we don't allow those types of stormwater management facilities for the on-site treatment to be located in those easements, because we may need to be in there at some point and replace a pipe or increase the size or whatever, and then we'd end up having to redo that. So we just do not allow those uses in drainage easements. The private utility easement that's along the south side there, or west side, the applicant will need to get permission from those utility companies to be able to situate that any retention basin in that location too.
Just to go off that, Nick, the applicant did forward an email from PG&E saying that that should be fine. So we'll request a more formal authorization by PG&E for that.
Yeah, and I think you can see on this exhibit that they don't need to move it too far. They just need to keep, the top of the basin can be right at that easement line. So it doesn't look like they need to move it over too much to be able to maybe fit it in there.
Okay, so we're not going to see dramatic changes to the design of this project because of retention basins, correct?
I wouldn't think so. If the private utilities are providing permission for him to build those retention basins in their easement along the west side there, the freeway side, I don't know why they'd have to redesign it.
Okay, very good. I think that's all we needed from you then. We can go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Nick.
Sure.
Okay, John, go ahead with the, continue with your report, please.
Thank you. So this image you're seeing is the conceptual frontage improvements. As I mentioned earlier, off-site frontage improvements are proposed under a separate permit as required by Tuscarora Municipal Code 9-4159. But as you can see in the top part of this image, they are proposing, I think, about a 3.5-foot wall with a gate and some frontage trees. And then on the bottom portion of that image is kind of the location of that wall. And it's important to note that this doesn't include, this conceptual frontage image does not include the existing structure that is being converted to an office. The buildings are designed to create a commercial park with tenant spaces for potential office, storage, retail, and food services. And it's important to note that only indoor storage uses are permitted and very limited outdoor storage uses are permitted in the CPK zoning. For the most part, the buildings are industrial themed with burnished masonry wall exterior ranging from light gray to dark gray tones. The height and scale of each building is considered to be compatible with structures on the north side of the property. The south side of the property is a non-conforming residential use. The site design and architecture can be considered compatible with the underlying zoning district, and we consider it to be utilizing high quality design components. Here are some SketchUps of the proposed buildings. As you can see, the burnished masonry wall ranging from a light gray to dark gray with red and blue awnings, sliding industrial garage doors, landscaping throughout the site. Here's the overall conceptual building layout, including the existing structure that is currently being converted to an office. It's important to note that this conceptual site layout does not include any of the proposed walls or elevation variation between the properties on the north and south sides. And here are just some more conceptual images. The applicant is proposing a highway-facing multi-tenant sign structure that will be constructed on top of a gazebo, which will be about 41 feet tall, and also a monument sign along El Camino Real. Under the Tuscarora Municipal Code, the proposed sign does not meet the standards for highway-facing signs. Therefore, it is considered to be a multi-tenant sign beyond the allowed height, which is allowed in the Tuscarora Municipal Code, and the maximum height for a multi-tenant sign is 12 feet. The monument sign is allowed in the CPK zoning district and will be required to meet standards of AMC 9-15008. GRC believes the multi-tenant sign to be appropriate, then a separate signage use permit will be required, which will be likely an administrative use permit in order to allow for a multi-tenant freestanding sign beyond the height allowed in the Tuscarora Municipal Code. Here are the proposed signs. As you can see, the multi-tenant sign constructed on top of the gazebo structure, and this is towards the rear of the property, so it will be visible from the freeway. And then on the right side of the screen is the monument sign proposed. Commercial zoning districts are required to have at least 10% of the site landscaped. The conceptual landscape plan for this project is providing an estimated 17% of landscaping, so it does meet that code requirement. The majority of the landscape area is towards the rear of the property adjacent to Highway 101 and surrounding the retention basins. They're proposing a variety of native and drought tolerant landscaping, including 27 box trees throughout the site. There's a minimum 5-foot landscape strip that will be provided within the side yard setback of all commercial project sites, and they are meeting this requirement except where there are buildings proposed. Here's the overall conceptual landscape plan. You can see the larger size trees, which are mainly oaks. There are parking landscape fingers. You can see the majority of the landscaping surrounding the retention basins, and then also landscaping proposed within the city drainage easement. Retaining walls and screening. Here's again the image of the conceptual El Camino frontage. That's estimated to be about a 3.5 foot masonry wall along the site frontage. And again, this is the off-site frontage improvements will be under a separate permit. On the other sides of the property, a 6 foot high perimeter masonry wall along the side property lines and towards the rear of the property is proposed to be constructed with similar masonry materials and will be constructed on top of a retaining wall as the project phases are built. The proposed buildings proposed to be built on this retaining wall adjacent to the drainage easement along the southerly and north property line. The image on the bottom is the proposed colors and the masonry material of this wall. And sorry for these images. This is a pretty fast moving project, and we've been working closely with the applicant to get as much project detail as we could. This is an image looking south of what will be the north wall profile with the buildings on top. The combined height of the retaining wall and perimeter wall, which in the image is titled CMU fence, appears to exceed height limits required by the Atascadero Municipal Code for fencing. The range of the height of the combined CMU fence and the retaining wall appears to range from 6 to 10 feet high. This is the south wall looking north. Again, this also ranges from 6 to 10 feet high.
John, before you go further, could you tell us
Yes.
what CMU means, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. So I believe it's concrete masonry unreinforced fence.
Concrete masonry unit. It's just a block, like a
Unit.
cinder block.
Cinder block. Sorry, and these are, it appears that these images are pulled from the construction documents. So that excuse all the technical language on there. But thanks for that clarification, Mark.
My pleasure.
This is the south wall looking north. Again, this ranges from 6 to 10 feet in height. The CMU fence, or we'll just call it the perimeter wall, is proposed to be 6 feet high, but this is proposed to be constructed atop of a retaining wall, which appears to vary in height. And this is the west wall, so the rear of the property. So this is what you would see looking from the highway. And the retaining wall with the perimeter wall would range from 6 to 12 feet in height. The portion in between building 1 and 3 would be a 42-inch high metal guard that would encompass the area between the buildings and for the patio area, which is roughly that area in blue. Under a conditional use permit, approval is required where fencing is proposed to be greater than 6 feet in height within or outside any required setback. If it goes beyond 6 feet, the retaining wall may be stepped in order to avoid the height allowance exceedance for the proposed screening wall, though this could require significant site changes. And staff will be recommending that in the areas where there's no building proposed in between the walls, that solid fence be replaced with a 6-foot wrought iron fence, except on the south side where the commercial use has to be screened with a solid fence. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant is considering office, various indoor storage uses, and food services. And all future uses will have to comply with the CPK zoning district permitting and standards. The project, with these estimated calculations, meet the parking requirements. They're providing an estimated 58 parking spaces, and that includes phase A, or the parking provided by that existing structure, which is being converted to an office. All parking areas do not have any parking stalls facing El Camino Real, and are proposed to be located facing the buildings and separated by landscaped areas. This is what is currently on site. The existing frontage conditions, you can see the site is currently being used for outdoor storage. The bottom right shows the existing site access. Just some more photos. In the top left, you see the existing structure being converted to an office, as well as on the bottom right. And just some more frontage photos. And then on the bottom right, you see the further detail of the existing site conditions facing south from the adjacent property. Here's the action form and proposed conditions. Relocate the basin outside the city easement. We're hoping this can be done without too much site change. Obtain and provide written permission from the utility easement holders to place stormwater facilities and retention basin within the easement area under the utility lines. And again, the applicant did forward an email from PG&E stating that those retention basins are permitted under their utility lines. So that's that condition has been satisfied. We'll just want to see something more formal from PG&E. If multi-tenant freestanding sign is considered to be appropriate by the DRC, we'll condition that the applicant apply for a separate signage permit exception to allow for a multi-tenant freestanding sign beyond the allowed height in the municipal code. We'd like to see a photometric light plan prior to permit issuance to see the lighting detail throughout the site. They have submitted some lighting details which show the location of light poles, but we'd like to see the full photometric light plan. The perimeter wall shall be no greater than 6 feet in height as required by the Atascadero Municipal Code. Minor conditional use permit approval may be required where fencing is proposed to be greater than 6 feet in height. As project phases are built, a wrought iron barrier fence shall be placed, shall be placed along the perimeter and or retaining wall where appropriate and be removed as buildings are constructed. And the retaining wall adjacent to the city easement shall be designed to keep footings outside the city utility easement splay line. And that's a public works condition, and Nick can explain that if he's still on the line, but it's basically so the retaining walls proposed don't impact the city easement in case the city has to go perform any work in the easement. If proposed perimeter wall and retaining wall on the south and north property lines exceed 6 feet, staff recommends that that wall be stepped. And if it is stepped, that would require that a second wall be constructed at least 5 feet away from the first wall with a landscaped area between the two retaining walls. And then we'd also like to see a final concept site plan that illustrates the location and height for the retaining wall and perimeter wall and screening, similar to what was submitted for the El Camino Real frontage. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, John. Heather, I know you have to go soon, but if you have any questions, why don't you take them now?
I'm actually going to call in and listen to the remainder of the meeting. So if you need, just talk to me and I'll unmute it.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's go through and see if there's any questions for staff. Dwayne, let's start with you.
Let me unmute myself there. Okay. Just concerning the, so they want to put a freestanding sign on the freeway there, right? And
Yes.
so is this, I guess I need some context as to why that would be important, as it seems like a lot of signage for what we have other industrial park kind of things and they don't have it. So I'm just curious for some feedback on that.
Yeah, typically we would not endorse this kind of a sign for a smaller industrial complex. This is the kind of sign you'd see for a major regional shopping center like a Costco or a Walmart or a Kmart or something like that. Typically these smaller industrial parks, they have signs directly on their buildings that you can see from the freeway. And there's several examples along 101 now where they have that. So typically this would not be compatible with our regulations, nor would it be compatible with the theme of development along Highway 101. So we're not suggesting this be approved. That's the bottom line. And if they want to seek an exception, they could apply for that separately, and the DRC should weigh in on whether this is something that we should be doing. But it certainly would set a precedent for this kind of land use, this kind of development. And we suggest that signage simply be on the buildings, and that they could do multiple signs on their building for each of the buildings that would be visible from 101. And if they do want a small freestanding sign, they could do that, but it would have to be much smaller than this and have to be a shopping center identification sign way down at the height of 12 feet. This is a very significant sized sign. So we're definitely looking for DRC input because it is part of the applicant's proposal, but I don't think staff is behind this particular proposal based on its precedent and unusual significance for this kind of development.
But they are also wanting to put a small little monument sign in the front, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's permitted under the zoning
Yeah.
district. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that seems more in keeping with the project. That's I'm weighing in.
Okay, any other questions from you?
No.
Okay, let's move on to Emily. Do you have any questions for staff?
I do, and forgive me if I'm missing some reference points here. I think specifically my questions are for John.
Yes.
Is there anything that shows us, or do you know, the finished surface elevations, and this is in relation to the perimeter walls, the CMU block walls at the north and the south?
Yes.
Do you know, or is there some point of reference in the information we have for how the finished surface elevations on this site will relate to the Elks Lodge property? Are we significantly higher than their facility?
It's lower. I think this site is lower than the Elks Lodge property. And so it's a drop. So the property gradually, this whole land gradually drops to the south. So when they do this grading plan, they're proposing to fill, if I'm not mistaken, the site, and the largest retaining would be on the south end, where it would be more of a cut on the north end. Is that accurate to say, John?
Yeah, I believe that's what they're proposing.
Okay. So in relation to the, the adjacent parcels, if on the north side it's a cut for the retaining wall plus the 6 foot of site wall, what would the Elks members using their site anticipate to see from their side, and likewise on the other?
So it's likely it would be a wall ranging from 6 to 10 feet of this stone material.
On both sides, or on the south side, and on the north side, if it's a cut plus a wall, it would be less than that? Or is there anywhere, I guess it's all 6 to 10 feet?
Yeah, we don't have the exact details. It just kind of ranges from 6 to 10 feet. The actual wall, which on these plans is titled CMU fence, will stay consistently 6 feet according to plan, but the retaining wall will range
Will vary, okay.
will vary based on that
And
grade.
the interesting thing about this wall is the applicant plans to build the retaining wall, then build a wall on top of it, and then build the building on top of that wall or attach it to the wall. So it's that wall, apparently, from what the architects told us, is going to be an integral part of the buildings, but there may be a time period when there's just a wall, and we don't know how long that time period is going to be. So therein lies one concern. Why does there need to be a very large wall on the property before the buildings go into place? If you're going to do a phased plan here, we'd rather see a retaining wall with a protective barrier that's transparent, and then when the buildings go in and they act as walls on the property. So something to focus on and have a discussion with the applicant on.
Sure, thanks. Okay, that's it for now. I just needed a better understanding of how these were going to work and look from the neighboring parcels.
Thank you, Emily. Mark, do you have any comments or questions?
I just want to comment on what Phil said about the wall. I see an advantage to having the concrete wall built if it's going to be an integral part of a future building. If it's done right and capped properly and it looks good, I think it's more economical to just go ahead and build it. It's going to be an attractive wall rather than have something that you can see through that you're eventually going to have to take out and then build the wall that you want. So, I mean, I would, if it's an attractive looking wall, which this building is, then I think the CMU wall or fence, whatever you want to call it, I think is appropriate. And I think it'll look nice. That's just my feeling on it.
Yeah, totally. I understand that, Mark. I guess our concern from staff is there going to be an interim land use on this property before the buildings go into place? That's something that is not particularly allowed by zoning. We're just concerned about that. So
I mean, it may not need, it may not need to be 10 feet high, but I think having a CMU wall of some sort that is going to eventually be used as the building, I think is a reasonable plan.
Any other questions, Mark?
No, that's it. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay. Phil, if I'm understanding what you're concerned about is that there's been some storage issues, that outdoor storage is taking place on the site. And with the larger wall in place, are you thinking it would be used for outdoor storage in the interim and the building might never be built?
Exactly. What if the site gets graded and these walls get built, and then we have a big flat site with 6-foot walls all around it, and the site gets sold, or someone decides not to build the buildings, and then we have an impromptu storage yard? It's definitely a concern. It's something that's not allowed by zoning. We'd have to enforce it, but it's oftentimes best to design sites and buildings and have them built in phases so as to automatically mitigate those potential types of issues rather than have to have us chase those issues down. That's just our initial thought from staff. And, you know, we're happy to see the applicant do a phased development here. And if it's logical to build those walls first and then attach the buildings to them, then so be it. I also am concerned about the appearance of an unfinished wall. If they're going to attach something to it, would it be rebar sticking out the top for a period of time? Would it look unfinished? How does that work? I don't think I've ever seen a development happen where the walls of the buildings are built first and then the buildings are attached to those walls later. It's just a unique thing. And so I just have some concerns about that.
Well, that's why I said that if it's capped properly, so you put it, a cap, so it looks like it's a completed wall. I don't want to see something incomplete naturally, like you're saying. But if they're going to build it and it's going to be used as a wall temporarily and then added to later, just cap it so it looks like it's a completed wall and belongs there. So I understand what you're saying, Phil. But
And just to go off that, what Phil was saying, we were hoping to see some more fleshed out conceptual designs of the retaining wall with the CMU fence on top, similar to what they sent for El Camino Real.
Okay, and going back to the storage issue, it looks like there was up to 1,000 square feet of outdoor storage allowable, and I couldn't find where that was on the plans. I know that the outdoor storage was always and has been a continuing issue. Where would they place that allowable outdoor storage?
So right here, Can you see that?
Right in
There's
the
that
middle.
little section right in the middle. It would be screened, and then also right here as well for outdoor storage. And again, that's under, I think the proposed square footage is under 1,000 square feet. So based on the building, the total building square footage, that could be allowed.
Hmm. And when you say screened, does that mean like chain link fence, or what does that mean?
I believe they're also screening that with the masonry wall as well. This might offer a better image here. If you see towards the back, there'd be a block screened area with outdoor storage, and right here as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead, and is there an applicant that would like to speak to us on this issue?
I believe that the architect may be on the phone.
Okay, well, while we're waiting, let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Annette, was there any emails regarding this issue?
No, there has not been any emails.
Okay, and Luke, were there any calls coming in on public comment?
Yeah, we have the applicant on the phone now.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, Luke, let's wait. I guess we have the applicant. Go ahead.
This is Darren. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to address the wall situation you were asking about next to the Elks Lodge, what they would see for a wall. I have a 3-foot retaining wall on my side with a 6-foot wall going on top of it. The Elks would only see a 6-foot wall. So they wouldn't see some massive high wall. My understanding of the municipal code in Atascadero is a 6-foot wall is supposed to be measured from the uphill side, which would be the highest point of that wall. So I'm still allowed a retaining wall below my sound wall, and that's what we've proposed for this whole project. Even on the south side, I have a 2-foot retaining wall to a 4-foot retaining wall. Then it'd have a 6-foot wall on top of it. So inside my property, you would see 6 foot. Outside the property where the easement is on the south side, you would see an 8-foot to 10-foot wall, which, as they were stating, that wall would go up 20-some feet once we put the building up on it. The building would be part of that wall. So everything we have designed here, we do feel we were within the municipal code of Atascadero by the wording. And I did send over wall profiles to John yesterday to his email right after he asked for them. So they do have them. They do have the grading plans that show my wall profiles that they've had for over 6 weeks now. So they have plans showing the wall profiles and all the heights of the walls, where they go.
Okay, Darren, could you give us your last name for the record, please?
Van Deventer.
Thank you. I thought it was, but I just wanted to make sure we got it right.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay,
Hello?
any comments on what was stated by Mr. Van Deventer?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, who is this?
Yes.
This is Gary Harcourt. I'm the architect for the project.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, we've worked really close. First of all, I want to thank both Phil and John for their report. It's very, very clear, at least for me, as to what they've presented here, and it's very close to what we're presenting. But yeah, the walls are of very much importance and integral to the buildings themselves. From the elevations that we provided, not so much these technical drawings, which are from Tim Roberts Engineering, but from my elevations, if John could scroll to those, we've provided those walls to have the same detailing as the interior faces of those. So even if it is 8 feet and 10, which is allowed from my understanding on the low side, it's going to be very good looking. We've broken it up with the bands different colors. And this material is not just CMUs. This product is actually a burnished material, and Darren's proposing to seal it once it's installed so it maintains its color and its brightness of contrast. So it'll be beautiful once it's done. You know, basically we've had to keep these walls where they are to maintain accessibility to each and every suite of these buildings. Buildings 2 and 3 particularly parallel the slope going down to the highway side. And so to maintain accessibility, we wanted to make sure that we didn't impose any problems for anybody and violate code. We've made sure that we've balanced our cut and fill and provided for 2% to 5% max slope of the site to maintain access to each unit along that sloping site. So the walls are basically a direct result of that parameter alone. The heights of the buildings are well within the standards. The kiosk sign is just something that Phil and I were talking about, or not Phil, John and I were talking about. It fills the gap between building 1 and building 3. If you could go to that slide, John.
Of the sign?
Of the site plan, yeah. It shows where the kiosk is. Maybe you can point that out.
Yeah, so right here.
It's down there because right now, the only frontage exposure we have to the highway is building 1 and the end of building 3. Building 2 doesn't really have any exposure. And because Darren's using such a great looking material, we didn't really want to clutter up the building. So we felt that the colors of the canopies, which are also standing seam metal roofs, they're long lasting, color retained. It's not going to be like canopies or paint. It's going to be very permanent in looks and very quality material. We wanted to basically separate the signage from the buildings. Now, it's not a deal killer if you guys don't really want to consider that, but I felt that it was very appropriate for this kind of a project, seeing that we don't have a lot of freeway exposure for individual suites, and yet keeping the interior very clean in terms of the materials being used and the landscape that's shown. This could be a really showcase commercial park for Atascadero if we keep it clean and don't clutter it all up. And if you go down the freeway, I'm not real crazy about signage on buildings, seeing it here, 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 here as you go. It's not like Burma shave. I would rather see it in one location and basically go inside to find my destination. But you know, it's a good point for discussion, and I think we could probably support it either way in terms of having merit. But basically, we're good on parking. We've allowed for extra landscaping. I think it's a great project for the city. You know, it's a win-win-win situation. I think the community's going to win just in terms of jobs and opportunities for new businesses. The owner's going to win that he actually is going to move in, very similar to your last presentation. The owner's going to move into building 1. That's going to be our first phase. And that phase will come right after we get this approval and the grading and drainage approval. And Phil, to answer your question, the walls will be built as we grade the project, if not before, because you have to have the walls to be able to grade up to it and basically create the pad that you're going to be building these buildings on. So these walls will be built first phase before even any building. And so we'll be doing the site improvements both on and off, the landscape that's going to be dedicated to each phase. All the utilities will be directed to the individual building locations. We located where we're going to have electrical terminations and water for sprinklers. And basically, it's just a really clean project. You know, we can reshape the size of this sign or make it whatever we want. I don't really want to submit it as a part of this project right now because it won't probably happen until phase 3. But I did want to run the concept by you guys to see where you guys felt this was maybe something that we could consider. The monument sign is just a monument sign. It's basically the same materials. Again, Darren's a mason, and so he's going to be using the materials that he's very familiar with qualified for, and basically this project is going to have a sense of pride of ownership because he's going to make it his home. He's going to be in the building 1 back there toward the freeway. So anyway, we're here if there's more questions that you need clarified, but I think the project is an outstanding project and offers a lot for the city.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And I think the question that we had that hasn't been answered is there's an interim period when the wall is built, but the building is not.
Yes.
Would
yes.
they all have rebar sticking out the top, or would it be capped, or how would it look during that interim period?
Let's talk about the phasing. Phase 1 is going to be building 1. That's the one that's closest to the highway, B1. And as soon as that one is built, Darren plans on building B2. So, you know, those 2 we would like to at least leave, especially since it's mostly behind Elks Club, not real visible, not real of a concern, you know, in terms of it being obtrusive, especially for a short period of time. But building 3, we may want to consider capping that. We do need to elevate the wall to 6 feet just for the hinge point. And talking to our engineer, structural engineer, that would be the low point. We couldn't really take it down to the slab level because it would really create some structural havoc for us in terms of tying that to the walls. So we would like to keep the 6 foot where we have it, both for the potential future buildings as well as for the perimeter security.
Okay,
So I see both answered, Roberta. I see basically capped on 3 maybe, and we would have to leave it for building 2 just because we need to build that right after we build number 1.
Okay, so would there be an extended period of time potentially, or is there a time period?
That would be, no, I don't believe there would be, but you could ask Darren. He's on, I think he's available.
Yes, I am available. That turning, as soon as I get my building 1 is almost ready to submit right now. From my understanding from my architect and my engineer, I should be able to submit building 1 really soon. By the time I get my grading permits, I should be able to submit that. Depending how long it takes to get my permit for that, hopefully my grading will be done and we can start on the building immediately. I plan on moving my equipment that's outside my storage into that building, my scaffold, my forklifts, all my mixers, all that stuff is going inside that building because that's something me and Phil have discussed that the city does not want it outside. The material that's on the site here besides my equipment is the block to build all these walls. It's already on site, it's made. I do have caps already made. They're a burnished cap, 4 inches thick, covers the complete top of the wall, matches the wall. So it will be, as Mark said, a nice looking cap. Soon as I get building 1 submitted, I do plan on starting Gary on building 2 to start getting the design and everything engineered for that so we can get that into the city. I would very much like to build right after I do 1, already be starting on 2 or right after I finish 1 as soon as I can, because everything is over on this 1 lot. This lot at 1600, I would like to get these 2 buildings finished and complete. Building 3, all depends on the bank. I would love to build it with everything else, but if the bank says no on financing, yes, building 3 would have to wait a little bit, so I could cap that off. But I very much intend on starting on building 1 almost immediately and building 2 not long after, if that answers Phil's question.
I think it does. Just explain to me as a layperson, when you say cap it off, that means it's going to be some material put on top. What does it look like?
Yes, we take the same material that the block's made out of. It's 8 inches wide, so it's the full width of the wall. It's 4 inches tall, and it's burnished, so you see the aggregate inside of it. That's going to match the block that's being built out here on all the buildings and all the walls. It will set on top of the wall. That way it seals the wall off, and we will put a sealer on it. No moisture gets inside the wall. That way you don't get any efflorescence, that white stuff that comes out of the block, any staining, anything like that. We plan on putting a graffiti sealer on this too, just in case anybody tags it, anything like that, that we can remove the graffiti fairly easy. So I've got a very nice looking product here. I want to keep it looking nice, and I'm doing everything I can to continue keeping it nice from now till 20 years down the road.
Okay, I think I got it. Thank you very much. Okay. And where would this proposed 6-foot wrought iron fence go? It says where there's no building proposed between the walls.
That would be between the building 3 and building 1 down where the kiosk sign was proposed, Roberta.
Okay.
It would just span the difference there. We were anticipating a restaurant maybe at the end of that building. And so we would be hoping to be able to open that up to some outdoor space. And then opening that solid wall up to just guards, you know, metal guards. That way they can watch cars and trucks go by and enjoy the outdoors as well as, you know, be comfortable even under that kiosk.
Okay, I think I got it. And metal guard, what is that?
Metal guard, that would be just like a handrail. Just
okay.
some kind of like a wrought iron fencing, but it only be 42 inches high.
Very good.
So
Okay.
very, very transparent.
All right. Let's go through and see if there's any comments that we need to give you before we go forward. Let's talk about site design and access. Could you put the plan up again for us, showing the access, John? Okay.
Will this
Let's
work?
see the access here.
So here is the access, the primary driveway access for the commercial park.
Yeah, John?
Yes.
We forgot to mention that those dark areas on that plan represent pavers. So we've broken up that sea of asphalt with some nice paver material, probably a color that would blend well with the canopy colors, reds, browns, beiges, to complement or at least contrast the gray asphalt. And we've got them at the entry points, we've got them at transition points and dead end corridors where, you know, it'd be hard to pave anyway, but we make it really nice in terms of the subtleness of the material itself. And then we do have a couple of things. We did send to John the layout for turnarounds for the fire department, and we look very good there. So all the clearances are met in terms of our islands. That's why you see at that middle section, John, those islands have been tapered just slightly more than the regular round ones. It's up toward the corner of the existing building area on this plan, and that was for clearances.
Yeah, we did receive that, and that'll be reviewed by the fire department.
Yeah, and so
on the second round of reviews.
Yeah, we used their template and basically laid that out. Actually, Tim Roberts did. And the other thing that we did submit to John was the actual photovoltaic layout for the lights that we're proposing, the 5 pre-site pole lights that are located on the site. So we've got that pretty well covered as well.
Okay. So it looks like we have some parking areas with some kind of a round fronted something there. Is that landscaping inside there or what is it?
Yeah, let me go to the landscape site plan. It's a little clearer.
That'd be better.
Sorry about that. So yeah, those round areas are landscaped fingers.
Okay, yeah, that looks a little better. Thank you. Much clearer.
Yeah.
Okay. And does the design review committee have any question about the frontage improvements?
What?
Frontage improvements.
No, I think I pretty much understand what it is that they're going to have to do. Just, and I think Tim Roberts has that taken care of.
Okay, and I think the retention basin location will have to be worked out with staff and engineering.
Yeah, we can shift that. That's really not going to be a problem. Tim says that we can reconfigure it, move it over, get it out of that easement, no problem.
Okay. Let's talk about design compatibility and the architecture itself. Does the design review committee have any comments or issues with anything that's proposed? Not counting the sign in the back.
I think it's a nice looking project. I like it.
Yeah, that's some nice quality material. Like I know what he's talking about, and it's going to be beautiful.
It will.
Okay.
I
Well,
agree.
yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the burnished block. I think it's a nice project.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it'll be an asset. It'll be much better than what we have there currently. And the only thing I had is really regarding the storage area up the middle. It's hard to see what you have there, but it looks like a little covered roof on the top with a cupola or something on the top again. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but straight in the middle, there's something.
In between those two outdoor storage areas that are going to be 6-foot walls with burnished masonry as well, there is another canopy, kind of like the lower level of that kiosk sign, creating kind of a gazebo. So it's a walkthrough. You can go from building 2 to building 3 mid-span. You don't have to go all the way around. You don't have to cut through landscape. It's a nice, meandering walk through there, and it's covered halfway over. So, you're going to have landscape on both ends, and then you'll have this covered roof area to complement not only the kiosk sign concept, but also that elevated portion of building 1, which is where Darren's going to locate his business. That last building, if you go to the individual building elevation or the rendering, you'll see that, well, I can't see it on that one, but you can see it on the overall bird's eye view where that metal roof is.
I'll pull that up right now.
There you go, that's it. So we would match, probably the material would be red or blue, probably blue just to complement the red there, and go blue in the center and maybe blue on the kiosk if we so design that's appropriate.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. It was hard to visualize that.
It is. I apologize because this has been a real rush project getting it in here and working with Phil and John, and their efforts are really appreciated.
Okay, and so
Roberta, this is Luke. Before we get too far from public comment, we do have one caller calling directly into the web.
Okay, I'm sorry, Luke, you're absolutely right. We skipped that. Let's open up public comment and go ahead.
I'm not sure if they're intending to comment, but I'm going to allow them to, just to double check. The caller's number is 805-538-8092. So I'm allowing them to talk right now.
Great.
So if you are calling from that number, would like to talk, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. We'll give you another couple seconds here. If you don't unmute yourself, I'm going to assume you're just listening. All right. Again, that was 538-8092 that you're calling from, listening into this meeting. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and mute them. Other than that, there is no other callers.
Luke, we could hear somebody, it sounded like.
Yeah, I think that's coming in over Darren's phone call.
Okay, then unless somebody comes back, let's go ahead and close public comment with the option of opening it if they call in again.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Dwayne, do I see a pen or something raised? Did you want to?
Oh, no, I'm just fidgeting, sorry.
Okay, very good. Just a question regarding where the trash enclosures are and where the air conditioning units and so forth located on site.
Do you need an answer?
Yes, please.
From me? Yeah, the trash enclosure is that area that John's kind of pointed out on this view. It's back there, a little further back there. You go. Yeah, it's out right there in the center. And the roof will basically be probably used for most of the equipment for each unit.
Okay. And so the trash enclosure is screened or
oh yeah,
block enclosure or something there?
Yeah, it'll be a 6-foot high burnished masonry wall all the way around it.
And I assume this will be dumpsters?
They will.
Okay, very good. All right, I think we may have it, except for the sign in the back. I do want to make sure that staff is very clear about those retaining walls, that they will be capped in the interim between the time that the wall is built and the building is built. Is staff clear?
Yes.
That's fine. Yeah, good.
All right, thank you. And let's bring it back to the sign in the back, the gazebo sign.
Let me pull that up.
There we go. Thank you, John. All right, let's take it from the top. Let's go with Heather Newsom, if you're available. Do you have any thoughts about that large sign in the back?
She on?
Okay, I think she's gone. Let's go ahead. Dwayne, any thoughts about the sign?
Well, I'm still not in a place where I want to go and seriously consider this at the moment. It seems I'm a little bit confused because if it's truly just a business park, then I'm not sure what it serves. You know, because people will be going there because they mean to go there, not because they're driving by to then suddenly see something. But that, you know, but if we're talking about more retail, then it's a different discussion. But right now, I'm just thinking that would be setting a new bar that I'm not really go there at least at the moment.
Okay. Heather Newsom, I saw your face. Did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I was actually the one that was calling in, but due to my logistical issues, had the problem of connectivity, and Overacker was on his motorcycle golf. You know how all that goes. So I was working from the car. Anyways, I think this is a great design. I'm good with everything you guys have worked through. So I'm just happy to see such great ideas coming to fruition.
Okay, so just let me be sure that I'm clear on this large gazebo sign on the side by the freeway. What were your thoughts?
Sorry, signage. I don't think that we want to have a huge monument of signage. I think we've talked through that being a concern. I think that having an more reduced signage would be better for this project.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, Emily, what are your thoughts on the gazebo sign?
I feel similarly. Quick question for staff, just for clarification. And am I correct in understanding that as proposed, it's 41 feet tall, where multi-tenant freestanding signs allowed to be only 12?
Yes.
That's correct. And just to further expand on that, freeway signage, if it's freeway signage for a commercial tourist use, which this doesn't fall under, is allowed to be 50 feet. So I think that's why it was originally designed to be that tall. However, the multi-tenant signage doesn't fit within the freeway signage standards.
Okay, thank you. Mark, any thoughts on the gazebo sign?
Yeah, just real quickly. I like it. I think it's a nice looking sign structure, but I would defer to what the city code is, municipal code. If it doesn't allow it, then I think it's a moot point to talk about it. So I would like to say, I would just defer to what the city allows. If it's not allowed, then we need to come up with something different.
Okay. I think we are all in agreement that we feel the sign is too big, too tall, probably not appropriate and not in keeping with a commercial park. I would like to put the caveat out, if there were a restaurant to go in, which it was mentioned by Mr. Vanderveer that that it might be so, then we could reconsider it down the road. But as it currently is, I don't feel it's appropriate.
Sounds good. I appreciate your efforts on this, guys.
Okay, Phil, have we covered all points, or is there anything that we've missed?
Yeah, let's double check with John, make sure. I think we've covered all the points, so.
I believe so. Just to be clear, generally to exceed that 6 foot wall height, a CUP may be required. So I'm trying to find the condition. So do we want to discuss that further, or is the DRC approving as is?
From what I heard from the applicant, they felt that there was a disagreement about that 6 feet tall. Some of it was retention underground and others was above ground. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we were to take it from the height from above ground, would it be 6 feet or less?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Design Review Committee, any questions about that? Any problems with it being more than 6 feet if that is below ground?
Again, if it falls within the municipal code standards, and I think it's okay. On the high side of the project, if it's 6 feet, then it's 6 feet.
Hey, Phil, are we creating a precedent or causing a problem by doing it this way?
I don't believe so. Our code is sort of strange that it measures the wall height or fence height from the highest point to the grade. Most codes actually look at them from the lowest point of the grade. What this really is a design issue. If we are confident that these are actually parts of the building, I think it's fine. We're typically concerned about very tall walls when they are viewed as a very tall wall from outside of the property, especially along highly traveled corridors like El Camino and 101. So I think really what it is, it's a design review issue. Is that appropriate as viewed from Highway 101? And are they in such a location where the view angle and setback and the quality of the brick is going to be acceptable? 6, 8, even 9 feet is acceptable. It's when you get up to 10, 11, 12 feet and you're right up against, you know, another property that it's typically an issue. So I think it's really a matter for the DRC to determine whether it's an issue. I think it really helps that these will be integrated with buildings. And I think that is the one caveat here that makes the walls acceptable, palatable for most of this development, if that's truly what's going to happen here. So tying those together is critical. Without that, this type of wall would probably not be aesthetically appropriate, and instead would be better off broken up with sections of metal rail fence or being lower in height. So it's solely the building issue that makes it acceptable from staff perspective.
Okay, so what you're proposing is they put in a barrier fence along the perimeter and the retaining wall where appropriate, but remove those fencing and continue onward at a later date when they're building?
That's essentially what we're saying, unless they're ready to build a building immediately, and they're gonna build that building within 90 days of the placement of that retaining wall. It's just that it's very challenging to guarantee when the building would get built or whether the next phase will ever happen, and then you end up with a wall permanently that's part of that structure. And if that's okay architecturally, then that's okay. I think that's a decision for the DRC, but we have to assume that on that south end, if that wall's gonna get capped and left, you have to assume that that is a permanent structure forever. Even though we assume a building's gonna get built, we can't force a building to be built as a later phase. So that's our only concern. And so I guess my question is, why not leave the wall off until you're ready to build a building? Is there a significant issue with doing that? And maybe that's a question for the architect.
Yeah, Phil? Can you hear me?
We can hear you,
Yeah.
Gary.
That property line actually is that exposure is probably the least height wall in the project. We go from about 3/4 of a foot above grade toward El Camino Real, and then we add, basically we go down to about a 4-foot wall as you're into that retention basin. So, you know, your average wall there for retention is 2 feet, 2.5 feet max, and we're putting a 6-foot wall. So, I mean, even at that, and we are landscaping in front of it because we have an 8.5-foot easement. So we'll be landscaping that, softening that wall, and it's only 8 feet wall high at the most. So, and we need the wall basically for the building to reduce the hinge factor on those bearing walls for the structure itself. We've got to get up that high, 6 feet.
Gary, I'm not sure I understand why it couldn't be the 2 feet like you were talking about and capped and ready to build the building when it's ready. You say it has to be 6 feet, but I'm not sure that I understand why.
Okay. The walls have been designed to support the structure as we've designed it. And to get the best structural integrity for the building itself, we can create the barrier walls or the privacy walls as a part of that retaining wall. And if we can go 6 feet, then the rest of the structure is easy. Okay, if we can't go 6 feet, now it's getting into a lot of dollars and cents trying to make this work. And I'm not even sure the footings will work, okay, in terms of being able to support it. Especially since we're having to stay away from that easement. We can't go into the easement with any of our footings. So we're having to come in with a J footing instead of an L footing, and it's much, much bigger as it is. So we're trying to kind of get that mid-range compromise, and 6 feet seems to be the magic number, talking to both my structural engineer and my civil engineer to make this
Gary,
work right.
I think that I'm still not understanding why the wall couldn't be built in combination with the building, and why
It can.
has to
It
get
can. If
built.
we were going to build it all at once, Phil, we could do it, but I can't guarantee building 3 would be built right away. 1 and 2, yeah, they're going to follow one after another. I mean, we're almost ready to submit building permits once we get our approvals here and with the grade.
Then why does that
building wall.
retaining wall need to get built now if you're not going to
Yeah,
build it
yeah,
now? I guess that's-
we're planning for the future here. We're not going to leave it blank. I mean, financially, it wouldn't make sense for all the site improvements we're putting in. We need that extra building.
It would also be very nice not to be able to look at the property next door to me. It's not the nicest looking thing I've ever seen. The wall would be something with my 2 buildings finished would be a lot nicer because it is burnished inside and out. So the commercial park here on the 2 buildings would see a nice wall on that south side instead of a wrought iron or a wood fence or whatever on top of that wall.
Mark, aren't you working on a project next door?
I think it's one over. It's
2 lots over.
project, yeah.
Yeah. There's one in between us.
But yeah, there's one in between, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So mine's not the ugly one.
No. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to mean it that way. Yeah. Didn't mean it that way.
I know, I'm
Let's
just
get back
screwing.
to work here, guys. Let's get back here and talk about this wall. I guess this is a question of trust is what I'm hearing. That staff is not sure that this will ever be completed, and the architect and applicant are saying that yes, it will, and this will be an asset with the wall this height. So again, we're looking at a design feature, whether we like the wall or we don't. So let's bring it back to the
Nice wall.
design review committee and discuss it. Heather Newsom, you're here now.
Yes.
What's your thought?
I think that it's hard to leave a freestanding hardscape like that with uncertainty of when it's going to be completed. And I'm kind of with Phil that I think it just should be built with building 3 all at once. I understand that it might provide better aesthetics for the property, but it feels like the project's unfinished with just a freestanding wall. So I would kind of ask that it would wait till building 3 and went in at the same time.
Okay.
It actually,
Dwayne, let's go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just struggling with, I guess the point, it sounds like it's financially more expedient to build them both at the same time, I assume. And then the other thing is the aesthetics, but you know, it doesn't sound like it's essential. I mean, I'm trying to hear what everyone's saying. I don't know if it's essential for that south wall to be built the same time as the other wall. So, I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about. If those other buildings are done, then I don't see any problem for that wall, which will be used to.
Okay.
It's a security thing too.
All right. Emily, what are your thoughts?
I have one question for staff probably. Would there be any reason that in this area or on a project like this, if that third building wasn't to be built, that a perimeter fence couldn't be built out of CMU?
It could. That's a really good point. It can be, absolutely. And so that's why it's a design review question. Should there be a wall there as part of this project? Let's just assume that that became a parking lot or a remnant vacant site. It could be, yeah. So
That's
we
what
can definitely think of it in that particular way.
In that regard, I don't particularly have an issue with it, considering most of the industrial parks in that area use a lot of CMU, and this will be a slightly nicer looking block product. I personally don't have, I understand the concern for, you know, not wanting to end up with incomplete projects. I think that's always a major concern in a town like ours that kind of has, you know, cyclical development over the decades. But I think specifically regarding the CMU block wall / fence, I don't have an issue with that in particular.
Okay.
Well, this is.
Thank you, Emily. And Mark?
Well, I don't know if I'm missing something here, but Phil, he's going to have to put a fence around this project of some sort anyway, right?
Right.
There's no mandate to fence the project. There's not a mandate. There's a mandate to have a barrier fence on top of a retaining wall. If the retaining wall is going to be higher than 30 inches, you have to have a 42-inch protective barrier to stop someone from falling off of that if it's part of a, you know, next to a.
Oh, that part makes perfect sense. But as far, right, I didn't even consider that part. Naturally, yeah, like you would have like on a deck that's 30 inches or higher above grade. So you got to have a safety barrier. But as a condition of approval, isn't he going to have to put a fence of some sort around this project? Isn't that part of the requirement of what the city's going to require?
No, you're thinking of a storage yard, and so we don't allow outdoor storage yards anymore in the CPK zone.
Okay.
So no, not for a parking lot or a building complex like this. Typically, they like to do that for security. Sure, so it's certainly an option. It's not a big deal. Really, what it comes down to is staff's concerned about land use on this property. We want to make sure that now and in the future, land uses that are proposed here are going to comply with the code and be aesthetically appropriate for the area. The wall is not a significant issue. It's an issue for design review. And as long as we can all be confident that the site is going to be developed and used in an appropriate fashion consistent with the code, then I think everyone should be satisfied with that.
I don't see why you can't condition it just that way.
Okay. I don't believe we can condition it that way as a design review committee. I think that would be a
Well,
CUP.
your recommendations, Roberta, I'm talking, your recommendations is that, you know, you're basically building a perimeter wall, you know, a barrier wall, and that you are making sure that this is used with the intended purposes for a CPK use. To do outside storage would be in violation. You'd be slapped with a red flag and red tag, and they would have to go away. We're trying to rectify what's there now and use the material that's on site, but we don't want to be punished for that in the future, okay? We want to be able to make this a nice project, build it into the project, and build it. And it's a nice wall. It's better than wood, it's better than metal.
I kind of like the point that Emily made about it, though. I think that clarified it some for me. That it's just going to be a wall that would have been there, could be there anyway. So.
Right.
I think it comes down to, as Phil was saying, the appearance, that it does have somewhat of a fortress feel to a wall, whereas a fence does not. But as Emily said, these types of walls are not uncommon with a commercial park.
They are.
So I think that we have the majority are stating that they would be okay with the wall as long as it is capped. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah. Yep.
I think Heather Newsom, you were stating that you would prefer something different. But
I think I don't
Yeah.
want to see unfinished project. I don't want to see components of it just linger as if, you know, a remnant of something that hasn't come through. So I'm willing to support all of my fellow colleagues' recommendations.
I think we would all agree, we want this project completed and we want the storage yard field to go away as soon as possible. And we will leave that
Absolutely.
to staff to
Agreed.
enforce that in code enforcement or other if that becomes a problem, but it's not proposed to be so, if I'm hearing the applicant and his architect correctly. Okay, so have we covered everything? We're going to allow the wall if it's capped. Everything else we've covered. John?
I believe we have, let's just go check the list. Oops, sorry. We've covered the retention basins. We can request the light plan. We've covered the wall. I think we have covered everything.
Very good, thank you. Is the applicant clear in the direction that you've been given?
I am.
Yes.
Very
doing a
good.
great
Thank
job.
you very much for coming. It looks like a nice project. We're looking forward to seeing it completed.
Us too.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yep.
Thank
Have a nice evening.
All right, good luck, guys.
Thank you.
All right, are there any committee member comments or reports? Seeing none, is there a director's report?
I don't believe I have the items outlined for you for our next hearing. Do we have Annette? Is she still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I didn't see anything for the next hearing scheduled yet. It's a little early for that since, yeah, it wouldn't be till September.
Okay, and sorry to keep you so late, everyone, and Annette, I know she wanted to get going. Okay, any questions for me for development review items that are happening in the community? I don't have another hearing lined up for you yet at this particular date. We do have several items that could be in the works soon, but too soon to tell.
Any questions?
I do. On our agenda packets, can we get them a little bit earlier? Well, we had a lot of reading.
I sincerely apologize for the tardiness. Here's the situation. We were getting some information right at the last minute for the Vandeventer project. We were really rushing to get them in because we did tell the applicant, you know what, we're going to try and get you on this agenda. And right up to Thursday night and Friday morning, we were still getting the plans from the architect. So I apologize for that. And John was really, really slow in writing the report.
Yeah, that's all my fault. Sorry about that, everyone.
I'm
Enough blame
teasing.
to go around. Okay, I like
I'll respond that Phil was really slow in reviewing the report.
No.
700 pages is a lot to process in
I
just a matter of
know.
about 4 days.
It really
we
is.
need to get you that much sooner. I apologize.
Right.
Yeah, we need to get you that by Wednesday at the latest. So we will do our best and work on that. Thank you, Heather.
I know. Thanks. You guys put together a really detailed packet. So thank you for all the hard work you guys had to do beforehand. It's just a lot of digestion.
Yeah, especially after last night. Yes, I know.
John, no matter what Phil says, we're doing a good job. So.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, meeting is adjourned.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good evening, everyone.
Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Bye. Your week.
Thank you, Steps.